All people want to live. Otherwise, this one would have happened differently. He wouldn't have come all this way. And that dark-haired guy wouldn't suffer countless hardships. After 99 attempts, he finally made it here, and this time he would see it through to the end. Final, round 20. Golems are the guardians in this round, and judging by the way they surround the uninvited guest who has come to their chambers, they are guarding that passage behind their backs. The guy is absolutely sure of something. Those guards won't let him through easily, and so this man should prepare for one of the toughest battles of his life. The battle was started by one of the golems abruptly snapping out of its seat. He immediately struck the place where his opponent was standing with great force. The dark-haired guy in turn had already started to run around his enemy from the other side. "Death seal," he said briefly, looking down at the scythe in his hand. In the same second, a red seal with a skull pattern appeared above the head of the guard who attacked him. Firmly grasping the scythe with both hands, the man changed direction and rushed towards the golem. Leaping high into the air, he struck his opponent with one sharp swing. The neck of the guard of the 20th round appeared to be cut, but this attack was not fatal. At first glance, it might have seemed that this blow gave absolutely no impact. However, this dark-haired guy's every move was thought out to the last detail. In fact, after using the Seal of Death in a successful attack, the damage increases by 100%. It was equivalent to 2 such blows at once. In the end, the guard's neck couldn't bear the strain and shattered into pieces. The golem dropped dead at the same moment, unable to do anything against his enemy. Meanwhile, seeing the death of their comrade, the other guards began to attack the intruder from all sides. But the man with the scythe in his hand had a trump card up his sleeve: the Knight of Death. The dark-haired boy immediately spoke up. In the same instant, total darkness fell. Now these golems will not be able to not see anything, and therefore this is a great chance for the man to attack. Flying up to one of the blinded enemies, the guy sliced him in half with a lightning-fast lunge. Finished with his opponent, the man looked tensely at the remaining guards. He certainly didn't expect an easy victory, but what the guy saw next briefly shocked him. Shit. These golems don't even let me catch my breath. Once the opponent started attacking non-stop, he realized that they were much faster than he had originally thought. These guards use not only fire attacks but also ice attacks, and since they kept coming, not giving him a second to think, the guy decided to activate the speed increase. Since these golems were thinking of increasing the intensity of their attacks, speeding up was the smartest thing to do in such a situation. The man's speed was so fast that every time he changed direction, there were residual images of him where he had just flown from. Finally confused, the Fire Guardian decided to let several arrows from his bow at once to try to hit the enemy with a square attack. But no matter how many arrows the golem released, the dark-haired boy managed to dodge each one. Some arrows did reach the target, but each time the target turned out to be a mere dud, formed by the man's incredibly fast speed. "You guys have a hard time hitting me," the dark-haired boy said mockingly, glaring arrogantly at the guards. But at the same moment, the smug smirk on the man's face was replaced by genuine shock. Looking under his feet, he saw a huge-sized magical seal beneath him. And when the dark-haired guy realized he couldn't dodge, a massive ice pillar formed in place of the seal that had been set, trapping the man with the scythe in his hand. He couldn't even guess that the guards of the 20th round could use such incredible circle magic. And while the guy was thinking about what to do in such a difficult situation, one of the golems had already come close to him. The guardian prepared to blow the ice pillar and the enemy imprisoned in it to pieces. That's when the man found a way out of this ice trap. "Moonlight destruction," he said furiously, turning his gaze to the golem in front of him. A bright red light cut through the thick ice in the same second. As it flew further, the light blade sliced the guard with the club in half. At this time, the guy who had freed himself from the trap swung his scythe, knocking down the remains of the ice pillar. That was pretty close. Such an attack could easily have wounded a man. And since the guy doesn't want to let it happen again, and besides, if he fights each opponent separately, the fight will take longer, he decided to destroy all the guards with one attack. The man raised his scythe upward, and the fire guard in turn had already prepared to once again shoot arrows at the enemy. The golem that commanded the seals also began casting a spell to help his comrade. Meanwhile, the dark-haired guy stepped closer and broke the ice beneath his feet with his foot. "Moonlight destruction," he said as he looked at the remaining enemies preparing to attack him. "Red moon!" shouted the man, after which he swung his scythe, forming a red blade across the full amplitude of the weapon's span. In a second, after flying several dozen meters, the blade sliced through all the remaining golems. With a relaxed exhale, the dark-haired boy landed next to the corpses of the guards. "Finally, all the enemies are dead. Now let's go check out what they were guarding." muttered the man, deciding to explore the mysterious place. Passing through the gate, he found himself in a large room. Looking around, the man couldn't immediately recognize what this place was. It looks like an ordinary temple, but there is a certain door in the middle. Do we have to go through that doorway? Or maybe something will come out of it? Realizing that there was simply no point in asking himself such questions, the guy decided that there was only one way to find out what this gate was for. That's right, you need to go and check it out for yourself. Approaching the unknown passage, a man with a scythe in his hand stood inside the circle in front of it. The big question now is whether that person can get through the game this time around. The conditions for entering the boss room have not been met. You need a minimum of 5 players to open the boss room. Hearing this from the system, the dark-haired boy looked perplexed at the gate, asking what it meant. There is only one player in front of the boss room. The player will be killed after 5 seconds for failing to fulfill the conditions. What the fuck? Shouted the man in a daze, trying to break free of the barrier that had suddenly appeared as the 5-second countdown began. Nobody warned you about this, you goddamn bastards! Realizing that it's useless to resist, the guy finally despairs. He can't believe it's going to end like this. Then the system counted to 2. The man looked at his hand, which had already begun to dissolve. Oh shit, the guy said, annoyed, not understanding how he could die so stupidly after such a long journey. The countdown is over. You're dead. You have met the conditions for activating the Rune of Regressions. Time is back before the first round begins. Using the Rune of Regressions, 100 out of 100. You have used all attempts to activate the Rune of Regressions. The rune is fading. The final 100th regression begins. It's time! Let's start the countdown together! While the other people were shouting the number 5 in awe, a threatening Oki aura suddenly began to be felt from the dark-haired hooded guy. Fuck! He thought irritably as he heard the crowd shout the number 4. Looking at his hands, the guy realized that he had indeed gone back in time. It took him back to a time when he hadn't been sucked into the damn game yet. Frustratedly clenching his fist, the boy can't believe he's dead on the 20th round. If only he could, he would stop time. Thinking about it, the hooded guy remembered how, before he died, the system informed him the regression rune had reached its usage limit. 1 second before the countdown ended, the boy realized that this was indeed his last attempt. And since there will be no more chances, he has no choice but to go through the frickin' game to the end. To wrap things up, the guy needs to get the other 4 players to the last round. Taking off his hood, he wondered who would be best suited for the job. A few minutes ago, a man in the crowd stands and looks at his classmates, excited that they will soon be adults. Moreover, they are happy that they will no longer need fake IDs to buy alcohol and cigarettes. Looking at the 2 dorks who were sharply distracted by the actress So Aaron passing by, the short haircut guy sighed and wondered what he should do after graduation. How about getting a job in delivery? Looking at Youngman standing next to him, he asked his friend what he was going to do next. Didn't I tell you? I'm going to be a gangster, the man reminded, glancing contentedly at his classmate. Calling his friend a sick bastard, the other guys explained to him that even one mistake could cost him his life. Youngman in turn pointed out that all people live once, so he wants to live a crazy life. The classmates laughed awkwardly and realized that this dude was a freaking psycho. They should cut all ties with him after graduation. You decided to change the topic of conversation. The guy with the short haircut asked the man what would happen to his personal shuttle after graduation. That sad and pathetic bastard? That jerk I won't even let go after graduation, Min explained, smiling contentedly. Laughing, the classmates remarked that that poor bastard must have thought it would be over after graduation. But that freak Youngman had turned out to be a devil in the flesh. With a smirk, the man confirmed that it wouldn't be over. He would play with this kid for as long as he wanted. Wait, isn't that your shuttle over there? One of his classmates suddenly asked, seeing a hooded guy standing in the crowd. It was at that moment that the man with the microphone on stage uttered the very words, "The time has come! Let's start the countdown together!" Seeing the guy in the crowd, Min confirmed with a gloating smile that it was the exact kid his classmate had told him about. This time, however, the hooded guy didn't look the same as before. There was an ominous aura emanating from him. Perplexed looking at this jerk, Youngman couldn't understand what was wrong with him. Meanwhile, a boy standing in the crowd had his hands on his hood. Taking the hood off his head, he immediately looked at Min standing nearby. Not taking his puzzled look away from the guy, the man mused aloud that he was kind of weird. Is he crazy? Why the hell does he keep staring at me? Min said irritably, heading towards the boy. Then, one of the classmates grabbed the man and told him to get away from that kid. It's the first day of the new year. Besides, today isn't the last chance to punch that jerk in the face, right? With a hateful look at the bastard, Youngman agreed to let him get away with it today. After bursting into tears, one of the classmates covered his face with his hand, not believing that they had finally become adults. After his words, everyone around them started wishing each other a happy new year. People are funny, celebrating New Year's Eve, unaware of their predicament. Hearing those words, Min looked at his classmate and asked if he was the one who said it. The guy, though, immediately brushed it off, explaining that he hadn't said anything. People are so fidgety and surprised. It's like watching caged monkeys, said a woman with wings, standing on the roof of a skyscraper. Dazedly looking at the angel in the sky, the people in the crowd can't believe this is all happening for real. Besides, that woman is so cute. Meanwhile, also looking up at the sky, the dark-haired guy wasn't surprised that this girl had reappeared. He still hated her even though he had gone through this 99 times already. While the boy was thinking about it, the winged woman in the sky laughed. Human brats, you all seem fascinated by my appearance, but it's best if you stop thinking about useless things. After all, I'm not going to be around trash like that. Judging by your reaction, it sounds like you can hear my voice perfectly well. Not wanting to listen to any more of this nonsense, one person in the crowd, pointing a finger at the girl, asked who she was and why she was cosplaying an angel. For flying toilet paper, she's out of her mind. Hearing this reprimand, the dark-haired guy didn't look at the man, realizing what would happen to this goon next. Angel in turn continued to look at the humans with a silent and creepy smile. How infuriating you are! The winged girl suddenly said, looking hatefully at the man who had insulted her. In the same second, the head of the man pointing his finger at the angel shattered into pieces. The guy standing next to the poor guy was instantly drenched in blood from head to toe. Panic broke out all over the square, and people began to scatter in different directions. With horror in his eyes looking at the corpse of the person in front of him, Youngman couldn't understand what the hell was going on here. How dare a lowly man speak to me like that? Came the angry voice of an angel. You people have no right to ask me questions. Don't be arrogant unless you want your heads to explode like that man's. You do realize what's going on, right? But what do you inferior people know? I'll explain everything down to the last letter, so listen to what I have to say. Hearing this, the dark-haired guy standing in the crowd realized that he would have to listen to this long explanation again, for the 100th time. Meanwhile, the angel began to narrate. So from now on, we will play a game with you. On the first day of every month, for 20 rounds, your soul will be brought to a new dimension to participate in the game. And there's only one thing you people need to do. You need to complete the tasks given to you. If you do, you will receive rewards and return back to the real world. You're probably whispering, if we complete the mission, will she spare us? However, even if you complete the task, you don't live everything. I'll only spare half of the contestants, assuming they can handle it, of course. But don't be too concerned, because I'm not taking everyone. While the woman with wings was saying all this, some people who were tired of her chattering started shouting for her to finally shut up. But the angel didn't react to that, and explained that only people between the ages of 15 and 29 would participate in the game. The dark-haired boy didn't take his eyes off her, but he remembered that he'd never imagined he'd be playing the damn game over and over again once he turned 20. I'm saved! Saved! An old man suddenly shouted with joy when he heard the angel's words. Angrily grabbing him by the scruff of the neck, one of the students asked the man what he was getting so excited about. Why would you even add oil to the fire in a situation like this? Youngman, on the other hand, looked at his classmate angrily and ordered him to shut up before the woman noticed. Does he really not understand the situation? He saw that man's head explode! Let's take a look, said the woman with wings, turning her back to the crowd. So, a total of 1,801,029,290 participants. Now that the rules are clear, shouldn't we start the game? As soon as the angel said this, all the people in the world from 15 to 29 years old moved to an unknown location. You are in your own personal space, visible only to you. Your task is to create a body for the transfer of the soul. It's something along the lines of customization. You only get one chance, so choose wisely, people. When the woman's voice in his head went silent, the dark-haired guy decided not to make up anything new and just choose the same thing he had done all the previous times. As soon as the boy thought about it, his body began to change. After changing his appearance, the guy also chose a nickname. His name is now Black Scythe. Sometime later. A light breeze drives the leaves of trees in different directions somewhere in the fields of the virtual world. Black Scythe, having finished choosing his appearance, had already almost completely moved into this world. This was the 100th time he'd been here. Since the guy has taken the same guise as from past attempts, the body feels like his own already. Meanwhile, the rest of the people also began to appear in this dimension, looking around in surprise at their new bodies. Looking at them with shame, the Black Scythe realized that almost everyone here had made themselves cool and beautiful, just like last time. But if they had a head on their shoulders, they wouldn't have done that. This is where the strong prey on the weak. If you're too conspicuous in appearance, it's easier to fall prey to someone else. If you die here, you die in the real world. Anyway, the time is almost here. There he is, youngman. As expected, this dude made himself a jock again. Looking at your faces, I get the impression that you are happy with your avatars, although I prefer it when you're filled with fear. Let's see, there are only 1,802,910 people. All the people from Seoul are here. After hearing this from the angel, some guy looked around and noticed that at first glance, you wouldn't know that there were almost 2 million people here. God, you pathetic humans, the winged woman said with shame, covering her face with her hand. Do you really think this is the only place where the gathering takes place? Whether there are other places where other angels gather or not is none of your concern. Well, the official start of the game is approaching. I'll start with a simple explanation. First, say mentally, status window. Following the angel's advice, Black Scythe opened the status window in front of him. There he saw his real name, Ryuman. Of course, like his others, all his characteristics were at a minimum. Flying over the heads of the players, the angel asked if everyone could see their status window. If they'd played games before, they should realize what scum they were now. That's why they have to get stronger. And if they manage to survive to the end and complete 20 rounds, they will of course be exempt from the survival game. Surviving players will also be granted a wish. And since this is your first time here, say inventory. I've prepared a gift for you, the angel said contentedly, looking at the players. Deciding to check what kind of gift this woman was talking about, Youngman called up the inventory. A random rune that could be used once appeared in front of him. Also, this item can only be used at first level, and this item is only given at the very beginning. If you take this rune and say use, the item will instantly apply. Taking out a rune from his inventory, Min immediately used it, then looked at his stats in surprise. Angel, in turn, noted that from the look on the humans' faces, they didn't seem too pleased. No matter what they got, they would have to accept the result. After all, it all depended on luck. After that, the winged girl remarked that it was time to cut to the chase. Having said that, she snapped her fingers with a smirk on her face. At the same moment, all the people standing near her moved to another place. The first round started up. The quest of this round was to defeat 100 goblins. The total number of participants was just over 1,800,000,000, and only half of them would pass. In this region, however, there are only 10,286 players, but the conditions were the same. At the same second, a goblin with a blade in his hand appeared not far from the crowd of players. Upon seeing this monster standing alone in a field, one guy cheerfully remarked that this dimension was looking more and more like a game every time he saw it. Perhaps everyone here was suddenly kidnapped to test some kind of virtual reality game? But the angel, still flying above the players, scattered her hands and warned them that it was too early to rejoice. After all goblins have not yet been summoned. Seeing the countless goblin army, most people in the crowd couldn't understand where such a crazy number of opponents came from. 10,000 men against 50,000 goblins. Fight or die, the winged woman said with a bloodthirsty smile as she extended her arm forward. At the same instant, the entire huge goblin army rushed towards the humans with terrifying screams. Panic immediately broke out among the players. Some of them ran away to avoid the monster's clutches, but there was one man who stepped forward in silent calmness. It was Ryuman, who decided not to wait for the others to dare to fight. Not realizing what this guy was doing, the other players began to discourage him and shouted that it was too dangerous to go towards the monsters. But Black Scythe was not going to listen to the advice of those who chose to shake with fear while standing behind the backs of others. At the same moment, the guy swung his foot with great speed and kicked at the goblin, knocking it back a few meters away from him. When you're in a group or organization, first impressions matter most. That is why the Black Spit must imprint the power of its strength in the minds of these people. The guy needs those pesky flies to avoid him and fear him. And to do that, he has to show how strong he is right here, right now. But the main purpose is different. Ryuman is looking to get Angel's attention first. And to get this woman to pay attention to him, the boy has to put on a little show. Grabbing the dead monster's dagger in his hand, Black Scythe moved a few meters in a sharp movement and ran behind the backs of two goblins, slitting their throats in the process. Such incredible moves caught the attention of the other players in an instant. No one knew this damn cool guy. Maybe he was from a special forces unit or something? What's more, he had an incredibly cool nickname. As they continued to watch this kid, some people began to wonder if these goblins were worth fearing. They are supposed to be the weakest mobs in the game, as they usually are. Therefore, the others are also able to kill these opponents. They might not be able to do it as easily as the Black Scythe, but they probably shouldn't have much trouble with these monsters during the battle. But as soon as the guy in the crowd said that, he was immediately jumped on by one of the goblins. The monster stabbed the boy with his dagger in a lightning-fast lunge. Seeing this, the other players panicked. As they scattered in fear, the goblin who had attacked the boy began to strike blow after blow at his already dead victim. Hearing screams behind him, Ryuman, who had slaughtered another monster, looked around to see what was going on. The armed goblins had already completely broken through the ranks of the players and began mercilessly killing them one by one. Now, no one will think it's just an ordinary game. The only thought in their heads now is how they can survive this fierce massacre. Survival instinct will take over people's minds, and they will throw all their energies to escape from this place. Ryuman also chose to escape on his first attempt. It wasn't until the second death that the guy realized there was no way out of this change. The entire field is surrounded by an invisible force barrier. This wall is impossible for an ordinary person to pass through, so this whole dimension is nothing more than a gladiatorial arena. Besides, since we are talking about gladiators, we can notice that modern people are very different from them. For someone who had never killed even a small animal in his entire life, killing a goblin would be an incredibly difficult task. But this world will not tolerate frivolity and cowardice. To survive here, you have to overcome moral principles, or else you may be killed by your own stupidity. While the monsters chasing the players were bludgeoning them with clubs and slashing them to death with knives, the angel flying in the sky was laughing gloatingly, saying that the battle between humans and goblins was very exciting to watch. Plus, it gets even more interesting when they have daggers in their hands. Beyond that, however, something else caught the angel's eye. What kind of man is this? He's only recently arrived in this dimension, and already he can take down monsters with such ease. After opening the quest progress of this strange player, the woman saw the nickname Black Scythe. This guy had already killed 70 goblins. Resenting the fact that this lousy system hides all player information except quest progress, the angel started flipping through something in the window that appeared in front of her. But be that as it may, even though leading these mere mortals hurts her pride as a noble being, the winged woman is willing to concede that some of the humans are peculiar and surprisingly interesting to watch. For defeating one goblin, the system gives players 4% experience and 10 gold coins. After killing another monster, Ryuman increased his level. By this time, he had already managed to defeat 75 opponents. When the system reported all this to the guy, his battle with the goblins was in full swing. The multitude of armed enemies did not turn to attack the boy. However, it was not a problem for him. Black Scythe had enough lightning-fast lunges to deal with all the monsters that had attacked him. Stopping on the spot, the guy deftly twirled the bloody dagger in his hand. At that moment, one of the goblins, having seen some man massacring all his comrades, decided not to mess with him and run away from here quickly. But not even a second later, the opponent caught up to the monster, mercilessly stabbing the dagger blade into its face and nailing it to the ground. Who's next? Ryuman raised his head and looked coldly at the rest of the enemies. Taking the bloody knife out of the dead monster's face, the guy rose to his feet and looked at the terrified goblins. Wiping the blood of his opponents from his face, the boy realized that these goblins were too scared to fight back, and so he decided to take a short break. Ryuman immediately called up the status window and looked at his stats. He had managed to rise to level 4 in no time. You can get 2 character points for each upgrade. Black Scythe thinks that the best choice is to put all of these points into dexterity. After all, in addition to increasing the chance of dodging, agility also increases attack and movement speed. There is nothing more important than agility at the beginning of the game. Twirling the dagger in his hand, Ryuman made sure that at this rate of progress, he was sure to catch the angel's attention. Like he'd said, when you're in a group or an organization, first impressions are always the most important. Thinking about it, the boy immediately threw his knife at the goblin standing nearby. "You're not going to come to me?" the boy asked irritably, looking at the monsters in disgust. Seeing the death of one of them, the other goblins became wary, but did not dare to attack the enemy. Realizing that these cowards were not going to fight him, Ryuman sighed disappointedly. Well then, I'll come to you myself, Black Scythe said, suddenly standing behind his enemies. Seeing the boy pulling out a dagger from their comrade's corpse, the goblins turned on him dumbfounded. But it was too late to think how that could have happened. Black Scythe created a sharp blade of light in space with a single stroke of his knife and shattered the remaining opponents. Your level has been raised. Progress of the quest. Defeat the goblins. 100 out of 100. Congratulations, you have completed the first round quest. Ryuman had no trouble getting through the first round. He slashed goblins like a madman to get the angel's attention. Also, this guy took first place for the fastest quest completion rate in the region. Moreover, it was the first in terms of speed, not only in its region, but also in the world. The Black Braid player completed the first round in 10 minutes and 21 seconds. That's not surprising, though. Ryuman has already taken first place at this stage many times. Completing quests in the top 3 is the most profitable, because depending on the place taken, rewards are given out. In addition, awards are given depending on the ranking in the region and the world. And this time, the guy got a ticket for a rare, low-ranked sword for ranking first in his region. But for superiority in the world ranking, the boy was rewarded with a chest with the possibility of choosing a special prize. First of all, Black Spit decided to use a weapon ticket dropped as a reward in his region. Once the guy selected the item in his inventory, the system allowed him to choose one of the 3 weapons presented. It's not much of a choice, but the boy should be glad he was able to get it so early. Without thinking long, Ryuman clicked the weapon he liked. The guy decided that a stiletto would be the best option at first. This weapon is pretty good for a quick start to the game, and so this garbage in the form of a goblin bone knife, the boy won't need it anymore. After closing the inventory, Ryuman decided to leave the selection of the world #1 ranking award for later. While there was pure chaos going on around him, the guy standing inside the impenetrable barrier summoned a status window. Looking thoughtfully at his stats and skills, the boy noticed something unusual. He's been given some sort of hidden title as the final regressor. This is the first time Black Braid has seen this in 99 tries. A few minutes ago, before the battle began, Ryuman took out a rune from his inventory and tried to use it. Just like the previous times, the guy got the rune of regression. The resulting rune was to be automatically engraved on the body of the boy's avatar. However, the system detected the remnants of the chosen rune in Ryuman's soul, and in the end, due to the special properties of this artifact, the engraving failed. The outcome, of course, was obvious. If the guy managed to engrave it again, he would be endlessly going back in time. But, unexpectedly, the system informed him that due to the remnants of the rune engraved in his soul, the player had been identified as a regressor with 100 returns. Received the title of Last Regressor. In this game, the concept of rank is higher than runes, and accordingly, the harder it is to get, the better the effect will be. For example, the rank of Last Regressor allows you to stay in the same place in spirit form for 1 minute after death, and then resurrect with all your health restored. Moreover, resurrection is a skill available only to priests, and even such a skill has a limit of 30% of recoverable health after resurrection. But the effect of the Last Regressor restores health completely. Ryuman really got something incredible. Precisely because this rank is incredible in itself, the guy made the decision to hide it from prying eyes by making the Last Regressor private so it wouldn't show up under the nickname. After finishing distributing the rewards, the boy stretched out, waiting for the other people who had completed the quest. Right now, Ryuman was most interested in how In-min was doing. Looking around, the lad spotted a blood-smeared man with a goblin bone knife in his hands. Looking at him with a smirk, the boy mentally noted that this dude would apparently survive this time too. Meanwhile, the other players were finishing the quest one by one. Looking at the remaining humans with an eerie smile, the angel couldn't understand why she was so bored watching all of this. But then she guessed that the number of goblins was dwindling, becoming equal to the number of humans. Apologizing to the players for her mistake, the woman flapped her wings and offered to add some more fun. Holding her dead friend in her arms, the golden-haired girl looked at the angel doomfully and asked in fear what kind of fun she was talking about. At that moment, the corpse of the man in her arms began to disintegrate. The corpses of all the creatures on the battlefield began to disappear. Then a deafening sound was heard in the distance, accompanied by a bright light. At the same second, an innumerable number of furious armed goblins appeared in the field. That's when players who still haven't completed the quest realized the deplorability of the situation. I've added a free 50,000 refill for you. That should be enough. The angel mouthed madly, glaring mockingly at the human. Grabbing daggers from the ground in their hands, the players immediately pounced on the goblins. What happened on that battlefield next is hard to describe in words. The number of monsters far exceeded the number of humans, causing many players to fall in this battle. But some, even when caught in a desperate situation, continued to fight until the very end. Some used their comrades as human shields to block the opponent's attack. Others, having lost their weapons, ran into the melee, trying to strangle their enemies or beat them to death with their fists. Meanwhile, when the number of players who had completed the quest had already reached 2,129, Ryuman continued to humbly sit and wait. But even those who were able to complete this incredibly difficult challenge did not find peace. Many had friends and relatives on the battlefield, and they were killed in front of these people right in front of their eyes. The number of people who had completed the quest had already reached 3,533, and suddenly, in an instant, the battle fell silent. The limit of players able to complete the quest has been reached. In the same second, all of the goblins disappeared, leaving the people who hadn't passed on bewildered. The angel still flying over the battlefield reported that half of the players had passed. This means that the mission has been completed. I'm sorry, but the rest of you will have to die. Those are the rules of the game, the winged woman said mockingly, looking at the remaining humans. At the same moment, the players who had not passed, begging the angel for mercy, began to disappear from this world. Hearing the piteous screams of the innocents, those who completed the quest were horrified when they saw the bodies of their comrades and relatives begin to disintegrate. Looking at them perplexed, the angel asked what was wrong with their faces. Shouldn't they be happy to be alive? It doesn't matter. You all survived. You can go back. Congratulations on making it through the first round, survivors. I hope you do better in round 2. After saying congratulations, the winged woman offered the players a look at the detailed totals before leaving. So far, Black Spit has taken first place in all regions, including this one. All of the rank rewards have already been given out, and rewards for passing will soon be in players' inventory. You have received 1,000 gold for completing the quest. Congratulations! You can buy items with gold. However, access to the store will only be available when you reach the 10th level of your character. As Ryuman read this text on the system window that popped up in front of his face, he noticed the surprised looks of others. Apparently now absolutely everyone knows that Cernikosa has taken the first place in the world ranking. Laughing contentedly, the angel looked at Ryuman and remarked that it was unbelievable that someone from her region was ranked first among all the others. Without taking her eyes off Blackbraid, the woman turned to him. Blackbraid, tell me, why are you so strong? Did you get a special rune? The angel inquired carelessly, then stopped talking abruptly. Tensing up, the woman realized that she had accidentally said something unnecessary. Looking at the winged girl with a smirk, Ryuman asked, couldn't the girl herself tell what rune he had based on his status window? Of course I know everything. I'm an angel, and the truth is revealed to me. I only asked. The woman explained uncertainly, glancing at the boy haughtily. The boy only smiled back at her, knowing full well that she had no idea of the nature of his power. Angel, can I ask you a favor? Blackbraid suddenly asked, surprising the winged girl with those words. Looking at him perplexed, the angel asked what favor he was talking about. I think the reward for achieving first place in the world is quite stingy, Ryuman smugly remarked, looking up at the winged woman from below. Hearing this from Black Scythe, Unming, who was standing nearby, looked at him dumbfounded. The other players were also surprised at this strange guy's brash behavior. What did you just say? Angela asked irritably, glaring hatefully at the man. Ryuman, on the other hand, did not back down and confidently explained that he wanted a better award. After all, he didn't like the one he received. Trying to analyze what the insolent boy had just said, the angel just hovered above his head and remained silent for a while longer. Did that human son of a bitch just demand something from me? I've been following him since he was good from the start. But is he underestimating me because he killed a couple goblins? I'll blow your head off, the angel said angrily, holding out her hand to the boy. But then she stopped, remembering that she had used this method before. Couldn't she even kill that insolent little bastard? However, after that, the aggression on the woman's face disappeared. A wonderful idea had occurred to her. So you're hungry for a better reward? The winged girl clarified, looking at the boy. Usually such requests are instantly denied, but I'll think about it. Let's talk in private. The rest of you can wait for me to come back here. As the descended angel walked with Ryuman to get some privacy, The other players they passed by couldn't believe that such an absurd suggestion worked on a supreme being. Everyone immediately wondered how good the reward that Black Braid would receive would be. Meanwhile, following the angel, the dark-haired guy gave a creepy glance at the man standing nearby. Feeling this strange boy's gaze on him, Min looked at him puzzled. Soon, Rune and the angel moved farther into the forest, where there was not a single soul but them. Perplexed, the woman asked him why he kept such a long distance from her, and then asked him to walk closer, as she had to turn around all the time. When the boy agreed to come closer, Angel looked at him irritably. Stupid people, you always have to raise your voice to make them understand. They're as greedy as they are stupid. As she continued walking, she wondered how she could change the reward if she didn't choose it. Besides, this woman would never give him a better reward, even if it was her will. Angel thinks Black Braid should just take what he gets. Now she's going to teach him a lesson for his insatiable greed. The girl plans to kill this insolent man immediately after they cross the border with that rock lying nearby. Of course, the woman's act could get her in trouble if she kills a player for personal reasons. Especially if players later begin to question the specifics of what is happening, the higher-ups may accuse the angel of ruining the game. That's why the woman has to make sure there are no witnesses. Stupid bastard! He should have just kept his mouth shut. So you want the reward, huh? Angel wanted to ask, turning around to look at the boy. But no sooner had she finished that sentence than she immediately saw a bloody fist in front of her face. Rune, without thinking, punched the girl in the face, not giving her time to realize what the hell was going on. Guy put most of his current strength into this strike to knock his opponent down, and he succeeded in doing so. The dazed angel, unable to hold on, fell to the ground. Trying to realize what had just happened, the woman leaned her hand on the ground. What the hell is this? Did the man just hit her? Not understanding how this could have happened, the girl looked at her palm, on which golden blood dripped from her nose. How dare you, you damn human bastard! The angel shouted in fury, turning sharply on the guy standing behind her. But when she turned around, she noticed that no one had been behind her for quite some time. While the angel was trying to guess where this guy could have gone, Rune had already run up behind her. The boy immediately grabbed the girl's wing tightly and squeezed it with great force. Looking at the guy perplexed, the woman immediately realized what he was about to do. Black Scythe immediately ruthlessly ripped off the angel's wing, screaming for mercy and begging for this madness to stop. But when the girl screamed out in pain, the guy only looked at her blankly. No longer able to bear such terrible pain, the angel fell to the ground, almost losing consciousness. Meanwhile, Rune, holding the severed wing in his hand, continued to hold the woman's wrist. When the woman who was bleeding golden blood fell to the ground in tears, the guy looked at her with disgust and asked her to stop whimpering. With his foot pinning the angel in pain to the ground, the boy grabbed the remaining wing with both hands. Now you can't run away, Black Scythe said, ripping the second wing from the woman's back. Mockingly looking at the girl lying on the ground, Rune asked her how it felt to have your wings ripped off. Does it really hurt? The angel, in turn, gritting her teeth hatefully, replied that it was simply unbearable. Then the guy reminded the woman how she had asked the same obvious questions to the pain sufferers 5 minutes ago and was flooding with laughter. Sitting down on her knees, the angel shouted to the man that he had lost his mind. What the hell is he talking about? Showing the girl a blade hidden in one of the torn wings, the boy explained that he knew she wanted to kill him with the weapon. And when Black Scythe, convinced of his guess by the woman's reaction, threw out a wing, the angel said in despair that she hadn't meant to do any such thing. Don't try to trick me. It's all over your face, Brielle, the boy replied, looking into the doomed girl's face. Hearing her name out of the pitiful man's mouth, a dumbfounded Brielle, holding onto his shoulder, asked how he knew her name. However, the boy replied to the angel that she didn't need to know that, then pulled out a dagger from his inventory. Not understanding why the guy pulled out a gun, the woman panicked and asked what he was going to do. Rune replied that his motives were obvious. Are you crazy? Do you want your head to explode? I can arrange that with a snap of my fingers! The girl wailed angrily, pointing her finger at the boy. In response, Black Scythe only looked at the angel and said confidently that she could no longer kill. Looking at the guy hatefully, the woman tried to figure out how he knew that. She waved her hand and shouted that the boy wouldn't get away with it, because her mates wouldn't let it go. Rune, in turn, holding a dagger in his hand, sent her mates to hell and explained that all angels are egoists who don't care about other people. That's why the guy doubts that they would care if Brielle died. Not wanting to listen to this woman any longer, Rune started to move closer to her. The angel, asking him to wait, explained that he wouldn't benefit from it. To this, Black Scythe replied that the benefit he will get, but Brielle will not know about it. Then the angel tried to scare the boy that he would not be able to return home, but he said that he already knew that the system sends everyone back when the game ends. At a loss for ideas on how to escape in this situation, Brielle promised to tell whatever the guy needed to know. However, Ryuman, taking the knife comfortably, replied that he didn't need it. If he wanted information, he would have tortured the woman to find out everything he needed to know. But to the angel's surprise, the boy already knew everything. The ecosystem of her species, Brielle's goals, and the fact that she was nothing more than a pawn playing the role of guide. In the same second, Ryuman got close to the dazed girl and deeply stabbed the blade of the stiletto into her chest. The dagger went through, causing golden blood to gush from the angel's body. Brielle, instantly killed by a stab to the heart, fell dead to the ground. The player, Black Scythe, defeated the opponent Angel. It has been confirmed that this player was the first to defeat an Angel opponent, received the title of First Angel Killer. Also, the Black Scythe player is rewarded with Angel's Blood and Rune of Bloodshed. The resulting rune was automatically engraved on the player's body. These rewards are given to the player who first kills the angel. Ryuman first learned about this award after taking revenge on the angel during his 13th attempt. Apparently, this is an award that only one person can receive. Each award can be compared to a unique item. If the angels find out Ryuman has already won the award, they'll be shocked. Well, of course, the guy did it for a reason. This item is the main reason why Black Scythe dared to kill the angel. Angel's Blood is able to change the player's class to Reaper, which is the natural enemy of angels. The use will only be available from the 10th level of the character. Classes are unlocked for all players from the 10th level. There are a total of 30 different classes in this game, and it is quite easy to change them. All you need to do is get a class-changing item. This is usually obtained naturally on a hunt or by fulfilling simple conditions. But there are some exceptions. When you need to change to a unique class, such an item is given to only one player under special conditions. And, of course, unique classes on a completely different level than normal classes. Bonus stats, advancement runes, skill composition, and more. It's just incredible. Be that as it may, Ryuman regained the item before even finishing with a first-round sweep. Therefore, he can safely use the reward received for the first place in the world ranking. There are 3 choices in the reward list. Triple the experience gained during the second round, get 2,000 gold at once, or find out information about the second round. Right now, the most important thing for Ryuman is to quickly get a 10th level to change his class. That's why the best option would be to choose to increase the ratio to experience gain by a factor of 3. It's a last-ditch effort for the guy, so he can't go wrong. He has to get stronger no matter what it costs him. Soon, the first round was over. A little more than 900 million people survived in the world, and all of them will be returned to this world on the 1st of February to pass the second round. Immediately after this system message, the transfer of souls into the bodies of the present dimension began. A second later, everyone who had managed to survive the first round woke up in the same places they had been before. Panicking, Youngman lifted himself up and noticed that he was still sitting in the same square where he and his classmates had recently celebrated the New Year together. Looking around, the man tried to figure out what had happened. Everyone, like him, fell to the ground unconscious. Moreover, the guy had some strange dream, and his head felt as if it were splitting. Looking at the clock on his smartphone, Youngman noticed that the same amount of time had passed in this world as in the dream. Meanwhile, the rest of the people began to wake up as well, holding their aching heads. Youngman looked at one of his classmates who had also woken up and asked how he was feeling. The boy looked at the man in surprise and asked if he had lost consciousness. When Min confirmed this, a classmate asked dumbfoundedly if everyone here had fallen asleep at once. In addition, as it turned out later, everyone was having some kind of freaking weird dream. What was going on? Looking thoughtfully at the other people raving about another dimension and goblins, Youngman explained to his friends that it was most likely not just a dream. So this was all real? Goblins, first round and all that? Does that really mean everyone will be back there on the 1st of next month? While a classmate was saying this in a panic, Min looked perplexed at the guy lying on the ground behind him and kicked him with his foot, asking why he wasn't getting up. The boy sitting next to him turned to the still-awake Kim Tae-shik, asking him to wake up. Not understanding what the hell was going on, the guy got to his feet and rolled his friend over, telling him to get up. However, as the boy rolled Tae-shik over onto his back, he noticed that his friend's face had gone pale. Putting his hand to his classmate's face, the frightened boy felt a dead chill coming from the body. Realizing what had happened, the boy shook with fear. "Shit, he's not breathing! I couldn't feel his pulse!" he said dazedly, not taking his eyes off his classmate's body. Looking at the corpse fearfully, Youngman asked if Teshik was really dead. "It can't be. He died because he didn't survive the game? Does that mean everyone here who doesn't wake up is dead too? This whole area is littered with corpses? Impossible. Only half survived. Then the next round will be the same? This is fucking crazy, for Christ's sake! Doesn't that mean that whether they were born with a golden spoon in their mouth or not, everyone should be on equal footing? Now there's no reason to cry that life isn't fair." After realizing this, Youngman looked at his classmates and told them to calm down. All they had to do was survive, so there was no point in shedding tears. Without listening to him, the guy trembling with fear sitting on his knees shouted that it wasn't fair to die without being able to play well. "It's not just us that's like this. Others have been involved in this situation too." "So what's unfair here?" Youngman asked, dumbfounded by these words from his friends. With a frustrated sigh, the guy with the short haircut pointed out that Min had practically been a bandit his whole life up until now. Of course he doesn't feel as if he would lose anything, even if he died right now. Others, unlike him, have many things they would like to finish. While the boy was saying that, he noticed that his friend wouldn't stop looking for something. Youngman explained that he couldn't find his shuttle. Where did the little freak go? Before he lost consciousness, the man saw him walking away in that direction. Is it possible that this kid couldn't even make it past the first round and died? Well, that explains it. How could a weakling like that even survive? While pondering about it, Youngman saw something unusual nearby. In the crowd walked some man wearing medieval metal shoulder pads. What's with this guy? And where did he even find clothes like that? Wait a minute. Is that even possible in this world? Guessing what this all meant, Youngman called up his status window. Seeing that the status window had opened after all, the man was greatly surprised that the system worked in the real world as well. Hearing his friend's surprised exclamation, the rest of his classmates also called up their status windows to see if it really worked. Noticing that the guys were staring into the void, Youngman realized that only their owners could see the status window. And since the system worked in the real world as well, it could mean that the ability to use all the characteristics and items was present. To test his hunch, Min picked up a small rock from the ground. Immediately afterwards, he clenched that stone in his fist with all his might, crushing it into pieces. Opening his palm, from which stone dust immediately sprinkled, the man looked at his hand in surprise. "How freaking awesome," he said contentedly, not taking his gloating gaze off the palm of his hand. This is breaking New Year's Eve news. Something strange happened this morning. In the square, in front of the festive bell, just after the start of the new year, about 10,000 citizens suddenly lost consciousness. Let's take a look at what happened. An unidentified woman dressed in an angel costume appeared above the festive bell and began a dialogue with the citizens gathered below. The explosion followed. The man raised his hand to the woman and uttered a line, after which he was promptly killed. Afterward, the woman waved her hand in front of the crowd. In one move, she made over 10,000 people pass out. According to the police report, most of the victims ranged in age from 15 to 29 years old. It has been confirmed that similar events have unfolded not only in Korea, but also around the world. Of course, a war immediately broke out in the comments under the video of this report. Most people were convinced that the reporters had nothing to do in the new year, and by spreading fakes, they decided to raise their ratings. Others, in turn, said it was true and advised the rest to flee. It's all unfolding just like the last 99 times. And unfortunately, this is just the beginning. At about 20 minutes past 6, exactly half of the townspeople who had lost consciousness regained consciousness, while the other half, comatose at the scene, were diagnosed with brain death. For the first time, more than 11% of the population died in an incident. And while articles about the deaths were being published in huge numbers, the real problem lay elsewhere. The abilities of the survivors, who all became known as players, carried over into the real world. They aren't high-level players yet, and so the effect is still small. But with the subsequent increase in level, some people will become transcendent entities. It didn't matter what advanced weapons others would use. Even if they utilize the full power of the troops, they won't be able to defeat the players. Uncontrollable human weapons will appear. And Ryuman isn't just going to watch the world descend into chaos. If left to its own devices, the land will be in ruins long before the 20th round. And so, there is only one solution to this problem. The Black Scythe must take control of the players by using overwhelming force. Of course, the guy will use different methods than his past attempts. The boy has thoughts on a couple people with good potential, and has already thought of ways to sway them to his side. But the time for action has not yet come. Rune has more important things to do now. Soon the guy was already standing at the front door of an apartment in one of the city's alleys. Opening the door, he entered his home. Walking into the kitchen, the boy noticed something. "What a bastard! He ate ramyun for dinner again!" Ryuman said with annoyance, looking at the open noodles on the tabletop. Walking a little farther, the boy peered into one of the rooms. A dark-haired boy was sleeping soundly there, covered with a blanket. He's sleeping himself soundly, though his big brother hasn't come home yet, thought a smiling Ryuman, looking at him. Ruvan is his younger brother who is in his 3rd year of high school. Their family was ordinary. However, after her parents died in a car accident, a lot changed in just one night. One of the most drastic changes is that Ryuman became the sole guardian of his own younger brother. Seeing the wound on the back of his brother's palm, the boy gently touched it. From that day on, the quiet and familiar life was over. Walking over to the light switch, the boy turned on the light in the room, thus waking Ruvan up. "It's morning, time to get up, Vaughn," Ryuman muttered, looking at his awake brother. Wiping his eyes from sleep, the boy lying on the futon looked at his phone and asked his brother why he had woken him up at 6 in the morning. At that moment, Ryuman abruptly pulled the blanket off him. The boy immediately explained that there was no time to sleep now, and then promised to explain what the matter was a little later. In the meantime, his brother should get dressed, since they would have to leave. Still not sure what he was talking about, a yawning Juan asked where they were going so early in the morning. If Ryuman was going to see the sunrise, he could have left his brother alone. "Listen to me," Ryuman suddenly said, looking at Vaughn seriously. "We have no time for sleep or rest. The world is in chaos." Not understanding what his brother meant by saying this, the boy sitting on the futon remembered that Ryuman was going to go to the ceremony to celebrate the new year. Was there really something wrong? Turning around, Ryuman promised to tell everything on the way because right now they needed to get out of here as soon as possible. Soon the two boys were already walking silently down the street. Still not understanding what was going on, Ryuman looked at his older brother thoughtfully. He looked so serious. What happened? "Vaughn, you have no idea what's going on in the world, do you?" Ryuman asked suddenly. Telling his brother that he was scaring him, Ruvan asked what had happened while he was sleeping. The guy walking ahead of him, without turning around to look at him, advised him to look at the top search terms. Vaughn immediately pulled his cell phone out of his pocket and opened the recent news. Dumbfounded, the boy stopped in place and asked what that even meant. An angel appeared and abducted people to another world? Continuing walking, Ryuman clarified that the angel actually transported souls, not abducted them. Not believing what was happening, Vaughn asked the boy if he was also among the players. The older brother confirmed it and said that he could only come back here and survive after defeating 100 goblins. Concerned, Vaughn ran up to his brother and asked if he was injured. But Ryuman turned around and asked not to worry about him. "How could I not worry about you?" The younger brother shrieked excitedly, looking up at him. Parents recently died, and now the only family Vaughn has left is his brother. Of course the boy knows. To fill the hole in my heart that my parents left behind. Ryuman had to take heart and become stronger, but having a strong mind and killing 100 monsters are different things. Brother has weaknesses too. But suddenly, smiling warmly, Ryuman said that he knew what his younger brother was thinking. Turning around on him, the guy told him not to worry and explained that in that dimension there was a characterization system like in games, and so the actual physical form wasn't important. Besides, when Vaughn looks at his brother later, he would forget about the excitement altogether. And when the boy asked what Ryuman was talking about, he advised his little brother to follow him if he wanted to find out. "I don't want to! Until you tell me where we're going, I'm not moving!" Ruvan suddenly objected, stopping abruptly. Looking at his older brother excitedly, the boy put his hand on his chest and asked to be told first. Looking back at him, Ryuman looked at his wound on his arm again. At that moment, there was sadness in his thoughtful eyes. "Bantegu," the boy replied succinctly. "We'll go to Bandegu's lair." Ryuman then implied that he was aware that the man was bullying his younger brother. Hearing this, a surprised Vaughn asked the guy how he knew that. Ryuman, on the other hand, reminded him that he was his older brother and therefore could not be unaware of such things. In truth, Vaughn didn't want it to be so obvious to his brother, who was already having a hard time. Vaughn, I'm sorry, thought Ryuman, seeing his younger brother's distraught face. Admittedly, he didn't really know about it. The first time the guy learned the truth was a couple hours after he got back from the first round. His little brother where you went that day. Sometime later, Ryuman, sleeping in his apartment, received a phone call from someone. I thought woke up and the guy took the call. That's when he was asked to come to the hospital immediately. Vaughn had already returned home blind and beaten by Bandegu. Because Ryuman is stupid and weak, he couldn't protect his brother. That was exactly why the guy wanted to apologize to Vaughn. No one's gonna make fun of him again. Sometime later, somewhere in an abandoned hangar in the same city, Bandegu kicked some guy with his foot, causing him to fall to the ground with a thud. These scum want to die! Didn't I tell them to each bring 200,000 won? The fat man shouted angrily, pointing his finger at the guys he had beaten up. As he approached his victims, he asked why they were silent. Did they ignore him? After these words, he proceeded to beat up the poor people in a rage. There were 3 men standing nearby and watching the scene. As I expected from Bandegu, he is ruthless even to his servants. Even seniors from other schools don't cross him. He's the worst enemy of all. Stretching his neck in annoyance, Bandegu headed towards the 3 of them, saying that these jerks were just useless. He wanted to buy himself a motorcycle with the money he'd raised, but now it wouldn't work. Looking at them, the fat man asked if they knew where they could get money. Then he gave a little time for the 3 of them to come up with something quick. Then one of them had a brilliant idea. As he approached Bontag, he reminded him of that whipping boy, tall, curly-haired. Why not call him? Bang Tegu immediately remembered Ryuan and remarked that he was going to call him today anyway. In fact, beating the crap out of that kid would be a great start to the new year. Agreeing with him, the 2 bandits said it would be a good idea to rob this boy. But after turning around on them, Bantaigu explained that the guy was almost homeless. He won't bring in any money, even if you beat him up bad. Plus, this kid's house is decrepit shit too. Besides, Ruvan doesn't even have parents. He only lives with his brother. And the moment the fat man said this, he noticed something strange and looked fearfully at the entrance. On the threshold of the open hangar door stood Ruvan and some other unfamiliar guy. After realizing who it was, Bontegu only laughed that he was scared out of his wits. As the expression goes, speak of the devil. No, this guy's not a devil. He's just a pathetic loser. Ruvan, you son of a bitch! The angry fat man immediately yelled. Shuddering with fear, Vaughn immediately averted his gaze and apologized. At that moment, Bontaigu noticed some retarded person next to his whipping boy. Glancing irritatedly at Van, he asked what kind of jerk was standing next to him. Had he brought another punching pillow with him because he was getting lonely? I'm Vaughn's older brother, Ryuman suddenly replied, looking at the bandits eerily. He reminded the boy standing behind his brother that he had told him to shut up and not to complain. Well, in that case, they'd have to die together tonight. Looking at his underlings, Bontegu gave them orders to deal with these scum with his gaze. Wow, the world has really gone crazy. On the agenda is a whipping boy who tries to fight back against his abuser. Approaching Ryuman, one of the thugs asked Vaughn if his brother was a good fighter. Asshole, did you shit your pants? Hey, the man said mockingly, gesturing to show how short his opponent was. At the same instant, a powerful fist blow flew into his face. From such an incredibly strong attack, the man fell to the floor unconscious. Seeing this, the second bandit angrily attacked Ryuman, putting his hand behind his back. And when he struck at his enemy, the dark-haired guy only took a step to the left, dodging this primitive attack. The boy immediately made a sharp lunge, sending another opponent knocked out. After flying a few meters, the bandit crashed backwards into the racks and barrels placed behind him. Noticing that their comrades were disabled by a single blow, the remaining enemies attacked Ryuman together, hoping to overwhelm him in numbers. In the same second, the remaining bandits were knocked out by deft blows to the face. All opponents were defeated, and only one Bandegu remained. However, the fatty was not at all embarrassed by the fact that all of his wards had been knocked out with such ease. You brat! It seems this Ryuman where you learned boxing. Does this guy really want to fight me with such lame skills? Thinking about it, Bontaigu turned to Brother One, and as he came closer, he asked if the latter thought he was something, since he had learned a couple of techniques. Coming close to Ryuman, the tall fat man asked the guy if he didn't know that physical fitness is very important in boxing. Ryuman then asked his opponent if he had seen the news, but Bontaigu only gave him a perplexed look and asked what in the news he was referring to. What the fuck is the news, asshole? He shouted in rage, swinging his fist. And of course, when the fat man tried to hit Ryuman, he was able to dodge with ease. After that, Bandegu launched a whole series of attacks. However, to his surprise, not a single blow on the bottom line reached its target. That's when the fat man realized something was wrong with this guy. Trying to catch his breath, Bandegu couldn't understand why the hell he couldn't land a single blow on this bastard. Now listen here, you rotter, suddenly said the angry Ryuman, after which a bright blue aura enveloped his hand. If you saw the news, you wouldn't even dare to stand up to a player like me. After shouting this, Ryuman slammed his fist into Banu Tegu's face with tremendous force. But even with such an incredible attack power, the fatty managed to stay on his feet and immediately launch a counterattack. However, when the man's fist seemed to have already reached its target, he noticed that his opponent seemed to vaporize and disappear from sight. After realizing what this meant, Ban Taigu turned around stunned, unable to believe that this kid was able to get behind him in such a short period of time. At the same second, another rather powerful blow hit his cheek. Clutching his face, the fat man began to insult Ryuman in a trembling voice, saying that he was nothing and just dirt. Ban Taigu then looked dumbfoundedly at his palm, on which he noticed the tooth he had just knocked out. "I'll kill you!" the fat man yelled angrily, glaring hatefully at the boy. Trying to hit Ryuman again, he sprawled and made a sharp lunge. But this movement was too slow for the boy, and so he was able to dodge with ease, after which he grabbed his opponent's wrist firmly. In the same instant, two strong fist strikes followed on Bantaigu's face. To the surprise of the guys sitting nearby who had recently been beaten up by the fat man, Bantaigu managed to stay on his feet again, barely conscious. Looking irritatedly at Ryuman, the fatty realized that this bastard was purposely aiming only at his face. Bandegu is sure that if he hits him even once, the slippery asshole won't be able to resist. And that's why he decided to put all his remaining strength into his last attack, abruptly snapping out of his seat. However, no matter how hard this fat man tries, he is no match for Ryuman, who has become a player. The guy managed to stop Bontaig's arm with a single swing of his leg, after which he immediately kicked him under his breath. Because of the speed Ryuman put into that punch, the fat man flew across the entire hangar and slammed into the opposite wall. Looking at his opponent sitting on his knees, shivering in pain and trying to regain his breath, the boy stepped closer and addressed him. "Bantaigu, are you in pain?" Ryuman inquired, looking at the fat man coldly. Even after all the comebacks, the boy hadn't forgotten how much it hurt him that day to see his brother beaten and deprived of his sight for the rest of his life. Ryuman doesn't want to go back to that hellhole again, and that's why he's obligated to do it. Walking up to the battered Banu tag, the boy crouched down beside him and took him by the hand with a good-natured look. "That's why you shouldn't have touched my little brother," Ryuman muttered, smiling grimly. At the same second, there was a loud crunch of bones. Bantaigu immediately cried out in pain, looking at the broken fingers of his left hand with horror in his eyes. Meanwhile, Ryuman took the fat man's other hand. When it reached him what this guy was going to do, Bantaigu wailed in panic, begging him not to do it. At the same moment, another scream was heard. The rest of the bandits woke up and immediately ran out of the hangar. Unable to hear these horrifying cries, Vaughn, still standing at the entrance, clamped his eyes shut and turned away. Looking at Bantaigu, staring at his broken fingers in tears, Ryuman asked him if he knew what would happen to him if he went after one again. Choking on his own tears, the fat man immediately promised that he wouldn't touch that kid again. "That's good," Ryuman said contentedly, after which he smiled and looked mockingly at his victim. "That's good. Still, I've got to follow through, or you'll forget, won't you?" The guy grabbed the exhausted Bantaigu's arm, whereupon a crunch was heard and a hoarse cry of pain came from the hangar again. Already out of the hangar, Vaughn turned to his older brother in surprise. He asked the guy how he managed to do that. Where had he learned to fight so incredibly? Turning back to his younger brother, Ryuman noticed that he seemed to be inattentively watching the news. Players could use skills in the real world as well. Still not understanding what that meant, Vaughn asked how that was possible. "And there you go," Ryuman said, extending his hand in front of him, whereupon a bright yellow light appeared from his palm. At the same instant, a black sharp dagger from another world materialized in his hand. Gently touching this knife, a delighted Vaughn couldn't believe that this object had just appeared out of the void. The older brother in turn explained that he could actually summon the weapon he had received into the real world. He put the dagger back into his inventory, and Vaughn looked at him in surprise and asked if the skills that Ryuman had used to dodge all the attacks were also from another world. The older brother confirmed this and told me that he already has 11 dexterity points. This is very similar to a computer game. Simply put, a normal person only has 3 points, while professional athletes have about 10 points. As he continued to follow his brother, Vaughn asked what would happen if he increased his level. But Ryuman just waved his hands and said that he didn't know, because he had never had it before. And of course it turned out to be a lie again. Ryuman is not going to reveal the truth about his return to the past. He tried to tell Vaughn everything in his 11th attempt. And then the boy was kidnapped by another player. And even though Ryuman managed to get his revenge, the guy still doesn't want to put his brother through that again. He should be ready to defend Vaughn in the upcoming clashes between players. So there are a few things he should do first. Do you want to get breakfast at the store? You must be hungry, Ryuman suddenly suggested. Soon the two men had already arrived at the convenience store. Following his brother to the ATM, Vaughn wondered why they had to come here. The noodles are in the other section. Asking the boy to wait for a while, Ryuman inserted his bank card into the ATM. He's about to withdraw all his savings. At the moment, the guy has 133,201 in his account. Seeing the large bills in his older brother's hands, Vaughn asked why he needed so much money. Ryuman replied that he would need it for some business. Walking over to the meat department, the guy suggested that his little brother pick something out today. But one immediately objected, drawing the guy's attention to the fact that everything here is very expensive. The prices of goods start at 5,001. Ryuman looked at him and told his brother to take whatever he wanted today. It's New Year's Eve after all, so they can't always eat noodles. Vaughn agreed, but then asked if they would have enough to live on if they spent so much. And when Ryuman asked him not to sweat about it, the boy admiringly took a pork belly chili from the refrigerator and offered to take this. He's been wanting to try this for a while now. It looks so delicious. And while Vaughn was staring contentedly at the package of meat in his hands, Ryuman suddenly came up to him and suggested that one day he go to a restaurant and get the most expensive steak. Smiling awkwardly, Vaughn asked his brother to knock it off, before showing him a package of pork belly and explaining that he had enough of that. Well, it's no big deal. Vaughn just needs to wait a couple days. Ryuman will feed him so much meat that he won't be able to look at it. Soon the two bought some food and sat down to eat lunch at the same store. Taking a piece of meat with his chopsticks, Vaughn contentedly put it into his mouth. Looking happily at his brother, he said that it was incredibly delicious. Smiling back at him, Ryuman asked his brother to eat more, but when Vaughn decided to thank his older brother, Ryuman got up from the table. Noticing the bewilderment on his younger brother's face, the boy asked him to wait here. After saying that, he turned and walked away, leaving Vaughn alone with the meat. After a while, Ryuman returned and put the black pen on the table with a clatter. Dazedly looking at the lottery tickets his brother had bought, Vaughn asked the man if he had withdrawn all the money to buy this. Taking the cap off the pen, Ryuman confirmed this and said that he had bought as many as 20 lottery tickets. 20? How could you spend 100,001 on lotteries? It's not like you'll even get anything! One shouted indignantly, looking at his brother with a frightened look. After listening to him, Ryuman began to write something and asked the boy not to rush to conclusions. Looking shocked at the lottery tickets, Vaughn asked the guy in a panic what he was doing. He put the same numbers on all the tickets. Why? Why, you ask? Those are the winning numbers, Ryuman explained, turning around confidently at his brother. Let's begin today's drawing for the Nato Lottery 1049, came solemnly from Ruvan's cell phone. Nervously biting his nails, the boy realized how much trouble he and his brother were in. They had just thrown away 100,001. I should have just bought better food with that money, Vaughn said hopelessly, glancing nervously at his phone. Noticing his brother biting his nails, Ryuman asked him to stop. Meanwhile, the lottery had already started spinning and giving out numbers. The first lucky number was 3. The second was 18. Next came a 9, and the fourth number was 38. When one saw all the following numbers, his panicked expression changed dramatically. Soon all the numbers of the Nato 1049 lottery were announced. 3, 18, 9, 38, 21, 1. Bonus number 5. There's no way! We won! Vaughn shouted in surprise, checking the lottery and ticket numbers. Looking at his brother excitedly, the boy asked in tears to pinch him. In response, Ryuman only looked at him awkwardly and told him to do it himself. Still not believing what was happening, Vaughn asked if it was a dream. Would you want this to be a dream? Ryuman asked his brother puzzled, to which the boy shook his head in denial. Smiling, Ryuman reassured his younger brother and confidently confirmed that it was indeed not a dream. Then, convinced that it was real, Vaughn jumped to his feet and shouted with joy. Ryuman in turn asked his brother to be quieter, or else he might wake up the neighbors. When the boy sat down next to him, Ryuman asked if he was really that happy. Without taking his eyes off the ticket, one asked his brother if he wasn't glad. Of course. Nodding, Ryuman replied briefly. In fact, Ryuman was the same way the first time. In the end, he even screamed. But after repeating this moment dozens of times, it became an annual must-see event for the guy. After each regression, Ryuman needs to accumulate a lot of money as soon as possible. Since about 900 million have already died, the economy will become shaky. Trading items between players, which will become much more active in the future, will be done for cash. Still not believing that he and his brother had 100 winning tickets, Vaughn asked the guy how much they would get for it. However, even Ryuman could not guess the amount of money he and his brother would receive. Perhaps the winnings would be so large that they could shake the world. A little later that day, MANHWA Bank. Ryuman coming here is not nervous at all, as he has already won the prize for this lottery dozens of times. Walking up to the man at the front desk, the guy said he wanted the first place prize in the Nato lottery. Smiling, the employee congratulated the gentleman. Then, looking over Ryuman thoughtfully, he noticed that this guy had gotten the first place prize, even though he looked like a student. I wonder why a student would buy lottery tickets. After looking at the monitor, the employee asked the boy to tell him where he had purchased his ticket. Ryuman immediately told him about the QS24 store, a branch of MANHUA. Hearing this, the man looked dumbfoundedly at the boy. Recently, a colleague came up to him and told him that this time they had won 115 tickets. What's more, although such a huge number of winners is incredible in itself, a colleague told me that 100 winning tickets were purchased at one location, and apparently one person bought them. Then the colleague asked the man to immediately call the president if anyone said they bought tickets from MANHWA branch. These would be VIP guests. Awkwardly apologizing to Ryuman, the employee asked him to wait a bit. A few minutes later, the president of MANHWA Bank came down to the reception area. Shaking the guy's hand, the bank director introduced himself as Jun. Smiling back at him, Ryuman introduced himself to him as well. So you have won the prize at Nato for first place. Sincere congratulations to you, sir. Jun muttered, looking at the boy. The president then motioned for the guy to go to a quieter place and asked him to follow him. Soon the two men approached the lottery ticket team's office. When they stepped inside, the girl sitting at the table opposite stood up and bowed to greet San. Looking puzzled at the guy walking next to Jun, the woman tried to figure out who he was. Could he be the president's son? Approaching her, the president explained to the girl that Ryuman was a VIP guest who had passed to receive the winnings. Then he asked the employee to take care of this boy properly. After saying goodbye to Ryuman, Jun asked him to feel free to deal with his issues. Looking excitedly at the VIP guest, the woman realized that he was the one who had won the prize for the 100 tickets, and so she needed to remain calm. Bowing to Ryuman, the girl greeted him and asked him to take a seat across from her. The employee immediately asked the guest if he would like something to drink. The guy said he was fine and explained that he would like to receive his winnings right away. Without objecting to him, the woman asked the guy to let her check Nato lottery tickets. Ryuman immediately pulled 100 lottery tickets out of his pocket and handed them to the girl. Dazedly going through the tickets in her hands, the woman realized that this guy had actually bought all of these and arranged the same numbers. Does he see the future? After a while, the staff member was done with her check and confirmed that all 100 tickets were eligible for the first place prize. Hearing this, Ryuman immediately asked the shocked girl how much money he would get for all those tickets. Well, sir, your winnings are about 22.5 billion won. The woman spoke in a dazed voice as she looked at the calm guy. After tax deduction, Ryuman had about 15 billion won left. Now that he has received the winnings, things will move much faster. First, the guy looked for a place to move, and already in the evening, he opened a brokerage account. Next month, Bitcoin will grow by 500%, and so the boy plans to invest in Bitcoin to grow profits. Soon, Ryuman rented a new house, which he and his brother would soon move into. But first, he decided to go with his younger brother to his old apartment to pick up all the necessary things. The boy immediately asked Vaughn if he liked the pictures of the new house they would soon move into. Looking at him, Vaughn replied that he had never seen such huge and expensive houses. Besides, judging from the description, It would have a nice neighborhood and good security. However, the boy was confused by the fact that they had rented the house. So he asked his older brother why they didn't buy a house with such a huge amount of money. "The thing is, I don't have any more money," Rune replied, putting his younger brother in a stupor with these words. The guy immediately explained that he only kept 1 billion and invested the other 14 in Bitcoin. Not sure how he should take in the information he had just received, Vaughn looked at his brother puzzled. "I know what you're trying to say, but I didn't do it mindlessly, understand?" Rune tried to calm the dumbfounded boy by patting him on the shoulder. He hugged his brother and explained that even if he lost all his money in cryptocurrency, he could get more from Nado. In his recent dream, he saw 4 sets of numbers. Hearing this from his older brother, Vaughn's eyes shone. He had only heard of people who dreamed of the right lottery combinations. "Brother, you memorized all the numbers, didn't you? Don't ever forget them!" shouted Vaughn, hopefully starting to shake his older brother by the shoulders. At this point, Ryuman began to feel dizzy and awkwardly asked the boy to let go of him. And while Vaughn apologized to him, Ryuman looked away, realizing that he just wouldn't be able to forget those numbers, since he'd done it a bunch of times before. Walking to the door, the older brother suggested that one go get something to eat, then get ready to leave. Looking at him puzzled, one asked where they were going to go. "Oh, I didn't tell you? We're moving in today," Ryuman said suddenly, looking at the boy with a smile. The sturdy man broke through the sturdy stone wall with a single blow of his fist. That person was On Min, testing his newly acquired strength. He put all his experience points into the force and has never regretted it until now. But that's not all. On Ming obtained a power rune that doubles his strength. He really got lucky with the initial rune. Even Mike Tyson would envy the power this man has now. Clenching the fist he had just used to smash the wall opposite, he realized that it was time to test his strength in real combat. A few hours later, he was already knocking on the front door of Ryuman's apartment. It didn't seem like this jerk could just die like that. However, he was already starting to feel embarrassed that this guy still hadn't responded. "You arrogant bastard, you think I'm just gonna let you go? You don't dare run away after looking down on me. I'll bury you." Thinking about it, Lan Min started to bang on the door with even more vigor. Although Ryuman is also a player, the man is convinced that this guy is still a loser. So today is the day he's going to teach him a lesson. Continuing to pound his fist on the door, On Min realized that this asshole was just hiding at home and wasn't going to come out. Having reached this point, the man decided to resort to a rather obvious but effective trick. "I guess this loser's not home. Well, that can't be helped. I'm off then," he said, leaning his ear against the door. Any sigh would be enough for Youngman, and then he would just blow that door open. But at that moment, an elderly man's voice sounded. An old man in glasses came out of the neighboring apartment and asked the student what he was doing in front of someone else's door. Looking puzzled at the stranger, Youngman asked why he cared. It's not like he's the owner of this apartment. Upon hearing this, the old man perplexedly fixed his glasses and explained that he was the owner. Trying to make sense of the situation, the older man asked the guy what he was doing. Had he really come to meet a friend? Then, realizing that this was a good chance for him, Youngman confirmed that he needed to meet a friend, then asked the host to open the door. He also explained that he had been unable to contact a friend for a long time, and so he urgently needed to get into that apartment. Looking pityingly at the lad, the old man replied that apparently his friend had abandoned him. The owner of the apartment said that the room was now empty. The student who used to live there had moved out today. When a surprised Youngman asked what that meant, the elderly man explained that he didn't know where the guy had moved to. This kind of information made Youngman very angry. He couldn't believe that this bastard just took off without saying a word to him. Meanwhile, Ryuman and his younger brother have already pulled up to the building that houses their new apartment. Stepping out of the cab, Vaughn looked up at the tall building in surprise, still not believing that they would actually be living here. Dazedly stepping inside, the boy marveled at the revolving door for entry. There's even pass cards, and there are guards at the entrance. Are you sure this isn't a dream? While waiting for the elevator, Vaughn kept looking around and telling his brother how awesome this place was. After reaching the 43rd floor, the guys got off the elevator and headed for their apartment. Once inside his new dwelling, Vaughn excitedly asked his brother how big the place was. Keeping his hands in his pockets, Ryuman said that the area of this apartment is about 330 square meters. Vaughn immediately pointed out that it was somehow too much for 2 people. Ryuman, in turn, reminded him that they had a lot of money, so the apartment had to be big. Then the younger brother asked how much it all cost. Ryuman replied that the deposit cost 500 million and the rent cost 22 million. Hearing these incredibly huge numbers, one couldn't believe that the monthly rent alone would cost them 22 million won. Just a short time ago, he was worried that he had spent 5,000 won on lunch at a convenience store. And while the older brother was walking around looking at the rooms, Vaughn came up to him and worriedly said that he thought this place was too expensive. Wouldn't it be better to move to a cheaper place? Sighing, Ryuman objected and replied that it was worth it. The more expensive the rent, the better the security. On the first of every month, players go into a coma and are at their most vulnerable at that time. Such people are vulnerable to disasters like fire and earthquake, as well as assassins hired by other players. Therefore, when the time comes, players need to prepare to go to another world in as safe a place as possible. No matter how cool you are in the other world, it's over if you die in reality. When the younger brother took off his bag, Ryuman asked if he liked it here. Turning around at him, Vaughn replied that there were no questions. Of course he likes it. Yep, it's good that you like it, Ryuman said with sadness in his eyes, lowering his gaze. Seeing the sad expression on his older brother's face, Vaughn lowered his head and thought, "Sorry, brother." He suddenly spoke without looking at the boy. "Next month you'll be dragged back to another world to fight, and I'll have no problem enjoying life." I'm so naive. I'm sorry. And while Vaughn was saying that, Ryuman walked up to him from the back and clapped him on the shoulder. Leaning over to his younger brother, he wondered why he looked so depressed. Did he really think Ryuman wouldn't come back in the next round? Turning around, the guy asked one to stop thinking about it, then suggested we go out to eat. There's a pretty good Korean restaurant on the second floor of this building, and at the moment when Ryuman headed for the exit, his phone received a call. Seeing this, the guy immediately realized that Youngman had finally found out that he had moved. In that case, Ryuman decided to just ignore him. Besides, the chance of them ever meeting again in reality was practically zero. But the same cannot be said of the other world. The morning of the next day, Ryuman, yawning, comes out of his room and notices his brother in the living room. Seeing that Vaughn had already dressed and was holding his own briefcase in his hand, the guy asked where he was going. In response, the boy narrated that he had ordered a rice cake and was now going to pick it up. Trying to analyze the information, the still sleepy Ryuman fell into a stupor and looked at his brother perplexed. The guy doesn't remember any time before his little brother ordered rice cake on the morning of that day. Of course, regressing to the past doesn't mean everything will be the same. But isn't this the first time one goes out to buy rice cake? After thinking it over, Ryuman asked the boy why he had decided to buy a rice cake. That's when Juan explained that it was customary to treat his neighbors after moving in. Isn't that a good tone? After some more thought, Ryuman thought it was a good idea to get along with the neighbors. A good idea, as expected from his brother. Throwing his messenger bag over his shoulder, Juan promised to go get the pie alone and asked his brother to stay here and rest. However, Ryuman objected and said that they should go and greet the neighbors together. Soon the two had already gone to get rice cake, and after climbing back up to their floor, they called the neighbor's apartment. "Who is it?" came a woman's voice from the speaker. "Hello? We just moved in next door. Just came to say hello to you," answered Ruvan in a friendly manner, looking into the camera. The door was opened to them by a woman and she smiled and greeted them. Looking at the boys, she noticed that they looked a lot alike. They were twins, weren't they? Vaughn confirmed her hunch, then held out a still warm rice cake to the woman. With a smile, the neighbor thanked the boys and promised to eat the pie with pleasure. One and his brother bowed to her and said goodbye. After a while, the boys went to the next neighbor's apartment. After calling the apartment, they told the man who answered that they had moved into apartment 4302 yesterday. When the man opened the door, one handed him the rice cake again in a friendly manner. Next, they visited another apartment, handing over a gift to an elderly woman. In this way, they went around to absolutely almost all the neighbors and got to know them. "Phew, bro, last neighbor left, let's just finish this quick. We can't give up," muttered a weary Vaughn, stepping into the elevator with his older brother. Going higher, Ryuman told the boy that this floor was the penthouse. Here, the 44th and 45th floors are combined into one. Surprised by this, Vaughn remarked that this meant that super rich people lived here, and while the boy called the last apartment, Ryuman said that he didn't know the details of who lived here, but it might be someone famous or just a rich family. But a few seconds passed, and the neighbors still didn't answer. Vaughn immediately thought there was no one home. Then he tried to call the apartment again, but no one answered. After scratching the back of his head thoughtfully, the boy turned to Ryuman and said that from the looks of it, there really wasn't anyone in this apartment. But just as Vaughn decided to suggest that the boy go home, he saw something unusual behind his brother. Holding a rice cake in his hands, the boy turned around and looked surprised at the people walking to meet him. "Isn't that actress Ciaran?" Admiringly looking at this girl, Vaughn remarked that she was incredibly beautiful and looked like an angel. At that moment, the man in the suit put his hand out in front of the two guys' faces, blocking their view of the actress. Tensely looking at them, the bodyguard asked the boys who they were. Were they fans? Apologizing, Ryuman said that they were just neighbors from downstairs. After saying that, one walked over to the perplexed bodyguard and handed him a rice cake. Lowering his hand, the man said that he mistook the guys for other people. Meanwhile, one asked the owners of that apartment if they wanted to try the rice cake. The man in the suit walked by and replied that there was no need for that. Aaron doesn't eat that stuff anyway. Then he went to the front door of the penthouse and applied the pass card to the code lock. Opening the door, the bodyguard asked the actress to come inside. Walking into the apartment, the girl looked around thoughtfully and glanced at the boys. "I don't know who he thought he was, but that was pretty rude," Ryuman angrily remarked as the penthouse door closed. Noticing his younger brother frozen in place, the boy asked him to ignore the asshole. Continuing to hold the rice cake in his hands, one replied that he was fine. Suddenly his face lit up, and looking at his older brother, the boy asked if he had seen what had just happened. Looking puzzled at Vaughn, Ryuman asked what he meant. Then, grabbing his older brother by the shoulder, Vaughn asked how he could be so indifferent. He had seen her. "Say Aaron! It's Z Aaron!" the boy shouted delightedly as Ryuman tried to figure out who this Say Aaron even was. Meanwhile, the sudden deaths of celebrities and actors who died due to heart attack were all over the news. Sitting on the couch in the living room of her penthouse and sighing heavily, Aaron reads all this news. She can't understand how the world can function and work at its own inherently familiar rhythm when so much has happened. At that moment, I got a text message from Hong Seong on her phone. The friend asked the girl if she had heard the news. Gong Sojin has died. When Aaron wrote that she had already been informed, Hong Seong asked if she would come to the funeral tomorrow. The girl replied that it wasn't even worth discussing. Hong Sojin took care of her, so she can't not come. After agreeing with Sun to go to the funeral together tomorrow, the girl put her phone away. She couldn't even think that someone more successful than her would die in the first round. If Aaron hadn't gotten a good rune, she would be in these articles now too. Catching herself at that gloomy thought, the girl realized that she had grown a lot. She would never have believed that she would ever seriously consider writing an article about herself. There's no way she could have gotten this far without the company's investment. Even this penthouse is rented by them. Noticing the girl's tense face, the guard approached and asked what she was thinking about. Aaron looked at him and told the man not to worry and said that she was fine. Sitting down next to him, the worried bodyguard asked if everything was all right. He had said to be frank with him, hadn't he? Lowering her gaze, Aaron asked how the world could become like this. How could she survive the next round? In response, the man in the suit advised the girl not to worry about the next round. She doesn't have to worry if he's here. You're too tense. Just have faith in me and relax, the guard added, turning away. Smiling gratefully at him, Aaron replied that she had no one else to trust, and so she was willing to entrust her safety to this man with peace of mind. When the company first assigned Z Aaron a manager and a security guard, she was wary because it looked like they wanted to keep an eye on her. However, if it wasn't for this man, Aaron would have died back in the first round. "I will protect you no matter what, so don't give up," the man in the suit said, looking at the girl. Without taking her eyes off him, Aaron smiled again and thanked him. Then she changed the topic of conversation, reminding the guard about the two guys who had recently moved in and came over to treat them to a rice cake. That cake looked so delicious. The bodyguard in turn explained to the girl that she would get fat if she ate that kind of food. Then the actress said that those boys tried hard to greet them. They must have been upset to hear such a cold reply. The guard, on the other hand, told Aaron to forget it. It's just a greeting. The man is sure these two want something from the girl, and they'll beg endlessly if she gives in even a millimeter. But remembering the expression on these guys' faces, the girl mentally disagreed with her bodyguard. On the contrary, it seemed to her that these two didn't look like bad people. Thinking about it, the actress noticed that these boys looked to be over 15 years old. That meant they had each killed 100 goblins to survive. The guard, thinking about it, agreed with her. Aaron finds it amazing that people who have gone through such violent events behave as normal. Sighing, the man in the suit asked the girl if she thought killing 100 goblins was very difficult. Only a dumbass would fail. However, Aaron realizes that the guard succeeded very easily because of his outstanding skills in the other world. Even so, this man wasn't as good as Black Scythe. He almost made the girl start to feel sorry for the goblins. In reality, this player must have a special job. I wonder what he does. The actress is convinced that she can survive the second round if she works with someone like Black Scythe. After all, this time she survived by luck. But will she be lucky next time? A few days later, Tuesday, January 31st, 11 o'clock in the morning. While cleaning the living room, Vaughn heard the sound of the front door opening. Seeing his brother returning from the bank, the boy greeted him. After turning off the vacuum cleaner, he asked the guy if he had received the money. Ryuman, looking into his phone, confirmed it, but explained that the money didn't come out that much in the end. He received about 15 billion, while the last time it was as much as 17. Hearing such huge numbers, one asked his older brother to stop joking, and then asked if there were any problems at the bank. This was the fourth lottery win in a row, after all. The president of Non-Hyop Bank, Guanjun, has already nicknamed Ryuman a lucky customer. Of course, the man was greatly surprised to see the guy again, and then asked what his secret was. Taking the lottery tickets out of his sinus, Ryuman answered, as he had last time, that he had received a divine prediction in a dream. And of course, the director had no reason not to believe what he said. Everyone dreams of having such a dream at least once. After hearing his brother's story, Vaughn said nothing and just looked at him awkwardly. After standing for a while, the boy still decided to ask his older brother what he was going to do with that money. Would he invest it in Bitcoin again? After turning around, Ryuman confirmed this and told him that he now had about 1,500 billion won in his account. Then, Vaughn worriedly asked the guy if he should start withdrawing money. He was concerned that Bitcoin might devalue, but Ryuman only replied that the time was still not right. Turning to the boy, he asked him not to worry and promised to take care of it. Then he suggested we go get something to eat. Soon the two were already sitting in a restaurant eating expensive food. When it got dark, they went to the store and started walking around the evening town and socializing. And with only 5 minutes to go completely, Ryuman lay in bed, and an excited younger brother sat down beside him and took his hand. "Brother." A concerned Vaughn suddenly spoke up, holding the boy's hand. "You have to survive and come back." Hearing this from the boy, Ryuman confidently told him not to worry. He had seen his older brother beat up Banataigu. "Don't be afraid. Just go to sleep," muttered Ryuman, lovingly stroking his little brother's head. "In the morning, when you open your eyes, I'll already be by your side, and I have to go," the boy added, saying goodbye to Vaughn. The same second the players started moving between the two worlds. A multitude of people found themselves in a field surrounded by a dense forest. Some began to panic, not wanting to believe they were here again. Others noticed that the location had changed. In addition, the displacement was incredibly fast. At the same moment, everyone noticed the number 1 player of the first round, Black Scythe. And since most recognized him, Ryuman realized that most likely no one would approach him for fear of the unknown. From the looks of it, everyone's already gathered, which means it's coming very soon. "Is everyone here?" Suddenly heard the voice of an unknown angel appearing high in the sky above the heads of the players. People, looking at the winged woman in surprise, asked where the past angel had gone. Had something happened to her? Something happened to the angel who conducted the first round, and so she won't show up, explained the girl, flying in the air. "Don't worry, people. I will guide you from now on. Since everyone is already here, I should announce the assignment for round 2. As soon as the angel said this, system windows popped up in front of the players. Round 2. Main quest. Choose a representative of the region in 3 hours. Participants in the world, 900,500,000. Participants in the current ESKS 45.5 region, 5,143. This strange wording of the task made the players think. To choose the representatives of the region? But it seemed to everyone that they would be told to kill monsters. At this moment, someone noticed a limit on the number of players who passed. It was equal to the total number of players in the region. Did that really mean that everyone would survive this round? I see you're confused, so let me clear something up for you. The angel's haughty voice came again. As you can see, you don't have to fight in this round. It will end if you choose a region representative. Area representatives can use their power to order other people around. At their command, you will crawl or die. Isn't that a tremendous power? Within 3 hours, everyone will receive a voting ticket. With their help, you will have to choose the person who will become the representative of your region. When he heard the angel finish, the green-haired boy raised his hand and wondered if this was really the end of it. Is there really nothing more to be done? The winged woman confirmed this and told them that the point of the second round was only to let the players vote for their leader. After that, they would all go home quietly. It could be said to be a small respite. All the people except Ryuman immediately started cheering. They were very happy that they would be able to survive without even fighting. However, this was somehow too easy compared to the first round. Now decide among yourselves who will be the regional representative. You have 3 hours to decide. The clock is ticking, said the angel, and then she disappeared. Upon hearing this, the players continued to cheer, not believing that they would actually survive if they just voted for 3 hours. Wouldn't that be too easy? Besides, if one became the representative of a region, they could gain power over the others. But there was one person in the crowd who was unhappy with this outcome. Youngman had been preparing for the fight all this month, and now he would have to wait even longer. A classmate standing nearby grabbed the man's hand and asked him to relax. Wouldn't it be good if everyone survived just by voting? But Youngman still wasn't satisfied with that. He put all his points into strength, but he can't show it. He's just furious. Ryuman, who heard their conversation, realized that since Youngman had invested all of his points into strength specifically, it meant that this time, Youngman had a rune of strength. Including this man's rune and the situation as a whole, everything goes as Ryuman remembers. For all 3 hours, players will decide who they want to vote for. But voting is only the tip of the iceberg. Choosing a representative is not the most important thing in this round. The existence of the main quest means that there are additional quests. And the additional and hidden quest of the second round is the advancement to get the class. To get the class, you need to reach level 10 as soon as possible. And so, like the last few dozen attempts, Ryuman went deep into the woods on the second round to kill monsters, while the rest of us decide who to pick as the region's representative. As soon as the goblin that had jumped out of the bushes got close to the guy, Ryuman snapped out of his seat and rushed in the direction of the enemy. With one swing of his dagger, he severed the enemy's head. You defeated the hobgoblin! Enemies killed, 1 in 100. Triple experience bonus used. For killing one enemy, the player was given 15 gold coins and 9% experience. Thanks to the Butcher's rune, all stats are increased by 1%. Going deep into the forest to hunt monsters was a good idea. And where there is one goblin, there are bound to be his comrades. As soon as the boy thought about it, several armed opponents emerged from the bushes. Seeing them, the guy smiled slyly. The second round is very different from the first. Unlike a month ago, the goblins will now attack Ryuman in droves, giving him no chance to get lost in the crowd. But of course, a person who has been through it over 90 times will have no trouble dealing with all these monsters. Standing in place and not dodging the attacks of the enemies at all, the guy began to chop the goblins one by one. After a while, the boy killed 50 hobgoblins without getting a scratch, thereby increasing all his stats by 50% with the help of the Butcher's rune. Wiping the monster's green blood off his face, Ryuman noticed that only 30 minutes had passed since the start of the task. Then he opened the status window and saw that he had already reached level 9 in such a short time. Without thinking for long, the guy made the decision to put all his points back into agility. If he obtained a strength rune like Youngman, it would be more efficient to put everything into strength. But in that case, it would be much harder to survive. It doesn't matter how strong you are if you can't hit your opponent anyway. It also works the other way around. Even if you have your strength maxed out, there's no point if you can't dodge a fatal blow. The player has only 4 characteristics: strength, intelligence, dexterity, and luck. Strength increases physical damage, health, and defense. Intelligence increases magic power, willpower, and thinking speed. Dexterity increases attack speed, movement speed, and gate chance. Luck increases critical damage chance, item drop chance, and extra gold. And naturally, each of these characteristics is useful in its own way, especially for a Reaper who uses both physical and magical power. It is good for them to increase all stats equally. And while the boy was remembering this, he heard a strange sound behind him. Just think about it. Someone had followed him? The guy hadn't been paying attention since he was hunting, but it looks like he's really being tailed. That's odd, since no one had followed him in past attempts. I don't know who you are, but come out. If you don't, you can pray, Black Scythe said angrily, pointing the blade of his dagger at the source of the noise. At the same moment, the unknown sound abruptly stopped. Suddenly, a girl wearing tall black shoes jumped out from behind a tree. It's me! Aaron shrieked excitedly, waving her hand at the guy. And while the girl awkwardly apologized to him, Reumann thoughtfully looked at her and immediately recognized in her that actress who lives a floor above. Then another man came out from behind the bushes and apologized as well. Sorry, we didn't follow you out of evil intentions. I hope you won't be mad at us. The stranger spoke, looking at Black Scythe. Above the man's head as he continued to say something, Ryuman saw his real name, Ansan Chul. If this person is Ansan Chul, doesn't that mean he's Ma Gyeong-lok's right-hand man? Ma Gyeong-lok is the eldest son of one of the largest companies in the country, a player with the nickname Heavenly Demon. And one of Ryuman's goals is to get this man on his side. That way, he can accelerate his growth. But most of all, he needs to recruit a priest who will be with Ma Gyeong-lok in the 20th round. The guy had never imagined that he would be able to meet Ma Gyeong-lok's right-hand man so early. But why did Ansan Chul come with Aaron? Mentally asking himself this question, Ryuman immediately guessed that the bodyguard who was with Ji Aaron that time was precisely Ansan Chul. If you think about it that way, it's common knowledge that part of Ma Gyeong-lok's business is sponsoring celebrities. But more importantly, I like Ryuman's point that the future has changed again. Looking at the two suspiciously, the guy asked as they started to follow him. Looking at him excitedly, Aaron explained that they had followed the guy from the beginning. She saw that Black Scythe had gone into the forest, and so she made the decision to follow him. Not satisfied with the answer, irritated Ryuman asked the girl why she followed him. The actress in turn replied that she was not thinking of anything bad. She just wants to offer something to the guy. Aaron immediately reminded the boy that he was ranked number 1 in the world rankings in the first round. So can we cooperate together or something? The girl asked awkwardly, looking hopefully at Black Scythe. Smirking, Ryuman asked the actress what kind of cooperation she was talking about. Doesn't cooperation mean that both sides need each other? But I don't need you. I'm good at fighting alone. Don't waste my time with useless talk and get out. The guy added, waving his hands. Saying that he had no intention of joining forces with them, the boy indifferently turned around and walked away. Looking after him, Ansan Chul wondered what was wrong with this guy. Just how big is this man's ego? And while the guard was pondering this, Aaron fell helplessly to her knees. Raising her gaze to the back of Black Scythe's retreating back, the girl surmises that he's number 1 for a reason. His pressure is terrifying. Looking at her perplexed, the bodyguard asked what kind of pressure she was talking about. Naturally, every person would be nervous about being stared at fiercely and having a sword pointed at them. Aaron wanted to team up with number 1, but things didn't go according to plan. Sighing, Ansan recalled that he had warned the girl that this was where it would end. People like Black Scythe are too proud to even think about allies. Yes, it's a shame they didn't get to team up with such a strong player. But there's no need to linger here. They had already wasted too much time following that man. Besides, no one said there would be monsters in the forest. Realizing that they still had quite a bit of time left, the actress suggested that her guard hunt until the main task was over. And so, when Ansan agreed, the girl decided not to hesitate and start hunting now. At the same time, somewhere in another part of the forest, an armed goblin standing among the trees, looking fearfully at the corpses of his comrades and trying to figure out where the enemy might pop out from. At the same moment, Ryuman ran out of the bushes and pounced on the enemy, waving a bloody dagger. That's right, there's no time to talk about cooperation right now. The guy's too busy to even think about that. It's more important to raise the level. After killing another hobgoblin, the boy removed the knife from its body. At that moment, several more monsters came to the boy. But this time they were not goblins, but large hyena-like creatures. 5 gnolls at once? Looks like I'm lucky, Ryuman remarked with a smile on his face as he looked at his opponents. In the same second, the horde of monsters snapped out of their seats and tore towards the guy, baring their teeth and preparing their hammers to smash him to the ground. These opponents are very different from goblins. They attack in packs and are generally much faster and more maneuverable. However, even such powerful enemies were not the slightest hindrance to Ryuman. With a few swings of his knife, the guy chopped all the gnolls to pieces. Enemies killed. 65 out of 100. Thanks to the butcher's rune, All stats are increased by 65%. Your level has been increased. You have reached level 10. You have met the conditions for advancement. Now Ryuman will finally be able to get his class. Having activated the side quest of the second round, the conditions of this quest popped up in front of the guy. In order to complete this quest, you need to get promoted to voting, obtain a promotion item, and get a class. If successful, a 50% discount on the item from the store is given. Usually when people see this side quest for the first time, they are stumped. Nowhere is it written about what classes there are. But everyone realizes that getting a class is very important. Also, no one knows where to get the promotion item. Usually it can only be obtained by fulfilling certain conditions. Future warriors must raise their strength to 10 and kill 30 monsters within an hour. It is then that they receive their item. To become a berserker, you have to hunt for a while bleeding. Assassins have to kill monsters many times by stabbing them in the back. In general, everyone must do something peculiar to their class to get the right advancement item. At first, Ryuman would attack monsters many times in a row and then hide from them in the forest. That was how he was gaining the Hunter class. But ever since he learned about the Reaper class, he had always chosen only that. And the current situation was no exception. Taking out an advancement item from his inventory, obtained by killing an angel, the boy used it. After warning the player that he could no longer change class, the system asked him if he wanted to choose the Reaper class. Of course, Ryuman didn't hesitate over the answer and immediately pressed the yes button. You've earned the Reaper class. As a reward for advancement, you receive a Reaper rune. The effect of this rune is to double weapon damage during the day. During the night, the attack speed is also increased by 50%. As long as the user stands motionless in the dark, the chance of being detected by the enemy is greatly reduced. The resulting rune is automatically engraved on the user's body. As a reward for advancing, you receive a Reaper's Scythe. For completing the side quest, you get a coupon for a 50% discount at the store. Your rank has been changed from Novice to Apprentice. There are a total of 6 player ranks: Grandmaster from level 99, Master from level 60, Expert from level 40, Commoner from level 20, Apprentice from level 10, and Novice given at the very beginning. With each new rank, the player gets special bonuses, just like in the games. The user can unlock class skills or new features. For example, Ryuman was already able to get the class skill Death Tag, which he used on the 20th round in his last attempt. In addition to this, there are also special items for higher ranks. If you don't get promoted, you could be a newbie forever, so it's best not to delay. Also, the first player to get an advancement gets a personalized neutral skill, neutral tracking skill, capable of locating a selected target. To select a target, you need to know its face and name. Price of one use, 20,000 gold. Although 20,000 was not a small sum, Ryuman still decided to test this neutral skill. And the person he decided to target turned out to be Youngmin. In the same instant, the skill triggered and the system notified that the location of Yongming's player had been determined. The target is 190 meters away from the skill owner. After informing the guy, the system immediately built a route to the target. 190 meters? The distance is too small, which means that Youngmin is also in the forest. In the last attempt, he was as far away as 2 kilometers. Remembering this, Ryuman decided to visit his former classmate. Meanwhile, the actress and her bodyguard are running through the woods, trying to hide from someone. Finally exhausted, Arin fell to her knees without strength. With trembling hands grasping her injured leg, the girl told her guard that she couldn't go any further. Turning around on her, Ansan shouted that they urgently needed to move, or they might be caught. Approaching the actress, the man helped her to her feet, after which he asked her to run, even if her leg hurt a lot. Apologizing to him, the girl explained that the place where the arrow had hit was burning. In response, the bodyguard reminded her that there's a theory that if you get hurt in this world, the wound won't carry over in reality. If Arin can make it through to the end, she will return home and be fine. Letting go of the guard's hand, the actress said she understood and promised to try to be patient. "And where are you going, huh?" A rough male voice suddenly sounded behind me. Behind them, a group of players with Youngmin at the head were already standing behind them. With a smirk at his victims, the team leader asked them why they were stopping. Looking at them, Ansan Chul gritted his teeth in anger. "Damn, we got caught up because of that idiot," thought the bodyguard, glancing irritably at the girl behind him. Realizing there was no choice, the man pulled a dagger from his inventory and prepared to fight. Wow, are you going to fight us? Youngman mockingly asked as he saw his opponent pull out a knife. Then, pointing his finger at his partners behind him, he suggested that the old man take a closer look. Didn't he notice the difference in numbers? Ansan Chul looked angrily at his enemies and asked them why they had attacked. The two of them did nothing to me. With a frantic look at the guard, the group leader confirmed his words. Perplexed by this answer, Ansan again asked the reason why Youngman's squad chased after them and attacked. We just need something. Youngman suddenly spoke out, throwing Ansan into a stupor. The squad was actually chasing these two to get the girl. The head of the group explained that they don't care about Ansan at all. All they want is Say Arin. As they began to whisper amongst themselves in surprise, the rest of the squad began to discuss whether or not this girl was really Xi Arin. The character's face and name are exactly the same. What if it was a copycat who was pretending to be Xi Arin? But then, laughing, they remarked that there was essentially no difference at all. This girl looked the same, and so for their purposes, she would be fine. Waving his hands, Youngman suggested that the guard just leave Xi Arin behind and walk away. He promised the man that the squad wouldn't catch up with him. You should have told me right away that she was your target. I would have kept her and wouldn't have doubted it for a second, Ansan thought, looking at the boy tensely. The bodyguard doesn't want to sacrifice his life for this girl. But unfortunately for him, there's one problem. If Ansan can't protect Lady Xi Arin, he will disappoint Director Magyarlak. Noticing that this old man had adopted a fighting stance, Youngman asked with madness in his eyes if he was going to fight after all. Looking tensely at his opponents, Ansan questioned if they were aware that they were committing a crime. Hearing the word crime, Youngman grabbed his stomach and laughed loudly. You make me laugh, old man. What are the laws here? Who makes them? What, are you going to file a report on me when we get back to the real world? Go ahead and try. But what proof do you have? Maybe it's not even my face. Upon hearing the sneering opponent, Ansan remarked that although it was incredibly annoying, he was completely right. Besides, it's unlikely that the guard will be able to change Youngman's mind with reasonable arguments. So he'll have to fight despite his injuries. And just as Ansan thought about it, he saw a man he knew standing nearby. Black Braid, leaning against a tree, just stood there and watched. Dumbfounded by Youngman's sudden appearance, the dark-haired guy put his hands in his pockets and stepped away from the tree. What's going on here? Rune inquired, looking at the injured Ansan. But when Youngman tried to talk Black Scythe out of it and said that they would figure it out on their own, the dark-haired guy shut him up, explaining that he wasn't the one asking. The guard immediately explained to the boy that the gang had been chasing them, and when they got them, said they wanted Miss Arin. He immediately asked Mr. Black Scythe to help them and promised not to be indebted. Hearing this, Youngman looked at the bodyguards with shame and ticked unhappily. And when Black Scythe asked him if that was true, the squad leader only brushed it off and told the guy to just stride where he was striding. It's none of your business, Youngman added, not noticing that the dark-haired guy had started to approach him. What do you mean it's none of my business? I know these people, Rune said angrily, covered in a terrifying black and red aura. Looking fearfully at the guy, the group leader asked him in a trembling voice what he was going to do. I can't leave the wounded in distress, Rune said, pulling out a Black Reaper's scythe from his inventory. Upon seeing this weapon, everyone watching realized why this player had chosen the nickname Black Scythe. In fact, Rune didn't even have a thought in his head to help these two out of any noble motives. He simply found it profitable. When the boy helps Arin, Magyarlak will be very grateful to him. If such an important boss owes the guy a favor, the reward will end up being many times the energy cost of the favor. Rune also has a personal dislike for these assholes. Noticing that Black Scythe had begun to approach them, the squad with Youngman at the head began to panic and retreat, trying to subdue the guy. Seeing their strange reaction, the dark-haired guy stopped abruptly on the spot and looked at the bandits perplexed. Smirking, Rune asked what the problem was. Didn't they want to fight? Tensely looking at him, Youngman couldn't understand what the bastard was carrying. He tore the goblins to shreds, and he was number one last time. Who would ever want to stand up to that monster? And while the man was thinking about it, Black Scythe suddenly lowered his weapon to the ground. The dark-haired guy asked the squad members to be honest if they didn't want to fight. Without taking his tense gaze away from him, Youngman wondered if the boy would let them go if they said that. I'll consider it if you drop to your knees and beg for mercy, Rune said haughtily, folding his arms confidently. The leader of the band immediately realized what Black Scythe was trying to achieve. He wants Youngman to humiliate himself right in front of his friends in CRN. The man would like to avoid a fight if possible, but this bastard really annoys him. Then, upon reflection, Yunming remembered something very important. He's strong enough to break through a wall with his bare hands. Maybe he'll be able to hit it and send the black scythe flying. Realizing this, the man smiled contentedly. "You're crossing the line, bastard!" Youngman suddenly spoke out, dumbfounding his friends. What do I have to do? Get down on my knees and beg for mercy? Are you sick of living? Do you want to die?" He added angrily, kneading his hand. As he began to approach his opponent, the man decided to start by shortening the distance and then punching him directly in the face. Not even the black scythe could survive that. If even a brick wall can't withstand such a powerful blow, then a person doesn't stand a chance at all. But at that moment, out of the blue, Black Scythe put his weapon back in his inventory. Dazedly stopping on the spot, Youngman asked the guy what he was doing. "Why did you throw away the weapon?" With a haughty glance at the squad leader, Ryuman explained that it would be unfair for him to go after an unarmed man with a scythe. It would be too easy a victory. "Are you out of your mind?" Youngman said, smiling irritably. And while he was thinking about it, the enemy had already managed to break away. His spurt was incredibly fast. The boy covered a huge distance in a matter of seconds, instantly getting closer to the man. Youngman, in turn, put his hand behind his back, realizing that this fight was going to be very easy. This dumbass threw his weapon away and put his head forward. "Die!" shouted the man, delivering a fist punch to the guy's face. But at the same instant, Black Scythe took a sudden step to the left, dodging the enemy's attack. Before he could realize exactly what had even happened, Youngman felt a sharp pain in his stomach. Converging, Ryuman kicked him in the stomach with a tremendous force, hitting him with his knee. From the power put into the punch, the group leader flew a few meters at a tremendous speed and fell to the ground. And while his back rested against the ground, Black Scythe walked over to the nearest tree and propped his foot against it. "You fucking bastard," Youngman said in a voice shaking with pain as he tried to regain his breath. "Stop swearing already!" A voice suddenly sounded nearby. Running up to his opponent lying on the ground, Ryuman kicked him in the chin, after which he remarked that his ears were already withering from the swearing. Clutching his face, the battered Youngman began to crawl away from the enemy coming in his direction. All his attempts were to no avail. Black Scythe came close to the man and grabbed him firmly by the scruff of the neck. Pulling his opponent close to him, Ryuman began to deliver blow after blow to his face. Feeling the terrible pain from every touch of his fist, Youngman realized that it wasn't a fist at all. It felt like it was being pounded with a hammer. The man felt on his own skin that the bastard was clearly no weaker than he was. However, Black Scythe can't have rune power like Youngman, right? Then why is he so strong? It was the last thought that came to the man's mind before Ryuman finally knocked him out. Seeing the ease with which the enemy had defeated their leader, the remaining members of the bandit squad decided to confront Black Scythe on their own. Seeing the guy being aimed at with a bow, a frightened Arin cried out, trying to warn him. But Ryuman managed to dodge the arrow even without her help. Unable to believe that this dude had so easily returned from his arrow, the dazed archer began aiming at the enemy again. Meanwhile, Ryuman had already assumed a stable position and was tearing towards the archer. Running from side to side, the guy started dodging arrows. "I see you were lucky enough to get a bow while hunting monsters," Black Scythe said coldly as he drew closer to his opponent. "But you weren't lucky enough to meet me." After saying those words, the guy abruptly took out a black scythe from his inventory and struck. In one sharp move, Ryuman severed the dazed archer's arm. Falling to his knees, the man looked at his severed arm and wailed in pain. Upon seeing this horrible sight, the short haircut guy took out his dagger and shouted to Black Scythe not to even hope to leave quietly after what he had done to their mate. After these words, he raised his dagger above his head and shouted at the enemy standing with his back to him. With a smirk at his opponent, Ryuman asks him if he's sure of what he's about to do now. Without waiting for an answer, the dark-haired guy activated the death mark on the enemy. Immediately afterward, he firmly grabbed the black scythe with both hands and brought it behind his back. With a lightning-fast lunge, Ryuman struck with a full amplitude swing. The red energy blade traveled several meters in a matter of seconds and chopped the legs of the short-cropped guy. Dropping the dagger from his hands, the enemy fell to the ground and wailed in pain, trying to stop the bleeding. The last member of the group, looking at his partner's severed feet, was petrified. But no sooner had he thought about it than the black scythe leapt from his seat and had already managed to get close to him. "Since you came at me with a gun, you probably believe you have a chance," Ryuman remarked, casting a death marker on the frightened man. In the same second, The remaining squad member's hand holding the dagger was severed. Rune stopped and looked back at his tearfully screaming opponent, noting that, as expected, the death marker was quite useful. Thanks to the double damage, it could even cut through armor. However, this fight didn't satisfy the guy at all. It was too easy, and so the boy is not going to end there. We need to instill terror in these assholes so that after this situation, they will never make an attempt again. Ryuman spent the next few minutes torturing his wounded opponents. He obliquely bore them deep in grievous wounds. The last remaining conscious wounded squad member told the guy in tears that he was dying and begged for mercy. "Stop whining! You won't die from this!" Ryuman promised him, shaking the blood off the blade of his black scythe. At this point, the guy made the decision to end the torture. With a sigh of relief, he shifted his gaze to the culprit of the whole situation. "You do realize you can't hide from me, right?" Black Scythe asked, looking at the tree behind which the beaten young man was sitting. "I don't make exceptions." After shouting this, Ryuman's scythe blade slashed through the arm sticking out from behind the tree. Youngman's arm fell to the ground. When he saw the blood gushing from his shoulder, the dumbfounded man cried out in horror. "Stop whining like a girl," the dark-haired boy said, looking at him with disdain. Compared to what he did to Ryumin, it doesn't hurt that much. After realizing this, the guy made the decision to chop off Youngman's other hand as well. Arin and her guard were watching tensely from the sidelines. This man mercilessly cut off both hands of an opponent who had already lost the will to fight. It may seem cruel to many, but Ansan respects cold calculation. This black scythe is able to stand up to even the president, Magyun Lok. Finished with his work, Ryuman approached the actress and her bodyguard and asked if they were okay. Ansan in turn replied that they only survived because of the guy. Pointing his finger at the bandits lying behind him, Blackbraid said that they would not have to worry about them anymore. As you can see, these dudes will have trouble moving for a while, so the actress and her guard can safely leave here and vote for someone. Bowing to the guy, the two thanked him again for saving them. Then, with a concerned look at him, Arin asked if the four of them would die from such horrible wounds. Turning around at these scum, Ryuman replied that he didn't care about them, even if they died. These bandits were even worse than beasts. Having said that, the guy looked seriously at the disappointed girl. She's too kind. What does she care about the lives of these scum? What a Mother Teresa. While the guy was thinking about it, the guard standing across from him raised his hand and asked permission to ask him something. The man wondered why Black Scythe had spared these four. There would be nothing in this world for him, even if he finished off these scum. Ryuman had expected Ansan to ask such a question. This man behaves exactly as Magyon Lok's right-hand man. You ask why I didn't kill them. It's very simple. There is no profit to me from their deaths, explained the boy, pointing at the wounded opponents lying behind him. However, the bodyguard thinks it's not a good decision. These four could cause trouble in the future. Looking at them, Blackbraid asked the man what kind of trouble he was talking about. It is unlikely that these bandits will ever come even a millimeter closer to the Black Scythe again. They will remember for the rest of their lives what happened to them today. Besides, there's nothing good about weeding out players. After all, it will reduce the number of those who make it to the next round. Looking at the injured bandits, Ansan realized what Black Scythe meant. If there were fewer survivors, the number of seats would also decrease. And consequently, the chance to pass on would be lower. This guy is really impressive. He even thinks about such seemingly insignificant things. He understands this game very well. Sighing, the guard agreed with Black Scythe and offered not to think about these scum anymore. But when Ryuman said goodbye to the two and turned around to leave this place, Ansan asked him to wait. The man asked the guy to give him his account number so that he could transfer him the amount for the rescue upon his return to reality. But to the bodyguard's surprise, Black Scythe only replied that there was no need for that, and without turning round, went on his way. While still looking at this guy's back for a while, Ansan couldn't believe that he had refused the reward. Did that really mean he had helped them for free? Without taking his eyes off Black Scythe's back, the guard made the decision to report everything that had happened to the president. Thinking about it, the bodyguard I looked at Youngman moaning in pain. He would really like to kill the bastard, but the man will hold back because he thinks Black Scythe is right. And instead of finishing off the bandit squad leader, Ansan only snorted in his face, then motioned for Arin to get out of here. Meanwhile, the people left in the field were trying to decide who to vote for. Of course, each of the players wanted to become a representative of the region and proposed his candidacy. There were even conflicts among some people, which then spilled over into fights. Others tried to calm the rampaging players, saying that fighting would not solve the problem. Seeing this conflict, Some guy in the crowd shouted out that such impulsive people had no right to claim the title of server representative and then nominated himself. After shutting the guy up, the fat boy standing next to him told him that his father was a member of Congress. And so, pointing his finger at himself, the boy suggested that he should be entrusted with the post of representative. Upon hearing this, the other players did not believe the fat man and accused him of lying. "Hey, everyone!" A loud male voice suddenly sounded, instantly catching the attention of most of the players in the crowd. A player with the nickname Mint Chocolate Boy reminded the others that there are only 2 hours left until the end of voting. It's better not to waste time on idle arguments and make a decision already. Then, looking at him in surprise, the players asked if the boy had any ideas. In response, the Mint Chocolate Boy nodded and confirmed that he had a great solution. Hearing this, all the people abruptly fell silent and began to wait for what this green-haired guy was about to propose. With a sly smile, the Mint Chocolate Boy realized that everyone was indeed unquestioningly obeying him. He knew his rune of persuasion would work again. When the Mint Chocolate Boy of all runes got the rune of persuasion, he was greatly disappointed. This item significantly increases the verbal influence on entities capable of dialogue. In addition, the artifact's effect does not apply to targets higher in level than the user. In the first round, this rune was completely useless against monsters as they had no speech. However, the green-haired boy soon found a way to put the item to use. Right during the battle, he began to study the surroundings and noticed how the other players, before killing the goblins, cut their legs so they couldn't move. Then the Mint Chocolate Boy pointed his hands at the woman surrounded by monsters and asked other people to rather help her. At the same moment, the players who heard him shouting left the unkilled goblins behind and rushed to the girl's aid. The green-haired guy repeatedly stole other people's unkillable goblins with this method, and eventually easily racked up the right amount of kills to advance to the next round. If things go as smoothly this time, he will easily become a server representative. As the dozens of players gathered around the Mint Chocolate Boy, he explained to them that first, they needed to decide which candidates for the region's representative were available. To make things easier, they would first narrow it down to 5 people, and then choose a leader from among them. People immediately agreed with his idea. It does make sense. It's certainly better than everyone yelling for votes. Fine, then let's choose. If you want to nominate someone, just raise your hand, Mint Chocolate Boy said, raising his hand up. But when the very son of a congressman raised his hand, the green-haired guy explained that you can't nominate yourself. If this prohibition is not enforced, everything will end up the same as before. Hearing this, the fatty unhappily lowered his hand and angrily tisked. The rest of the players started discussing it and agreeing with the Minty Chocolate Boy's opinion. Looking at them with a sly grin, the guy once again realized how easy it was to sell nonsense to these brainless idiots. Ignoring the haughty expression on his face, people began to think about who they might choose as a candidate. The problem is that most of the people here don't know each other. There was a thoughtful silence in the entire playing area of the second round. And such an outcome played into the hands of the Mint Chocolate Boy. He expected it to happen this way. People don't know who to choose as a representative, so they will only call those who have managed to stand out. At the same second, the man standing behind the green-haired boy raised his hand and offered to make the Mint Chocolate Boy the region's representative. He then added to the men that someone smart and with leadership skills should be the spokesperson. Some people, after listening to him, agreed to his proposal. Peppermint Chocolate Boy is even now a great crowd pleaser, so it's understandable that he'd make a good leader. Already happy that he had managed to fool these suckers, the green-haired guy thanked them for their trust and then proposed to end the voting if there were no other candidates. But at that moment, he was interrupted by a player who raised his hand and said that he wanted to nominate Black Scythe as a candidate. It was expected. It would be weird if no one mentioned the player who was the best in the first round. Suddenly, people started voting for completely different players. Someone nominated the person with the nickname Life is a Documentary, who came in second place. Another guy suggested that the player Black Dragon in My Right Hand should be the server representative. Thus, 4 candidates have already been nominated. There was only 1 vacant seat left. The green-haired boy raised his hand and asked if anyone else had any suggestions. There was no answer to his question, and so, clapping his hands, the Minty Chocolate Boy suggested we settle on 4 candidates. Before the vote, each candidate must come forward and make a speech. I'll go first, the guy said, mentally amazed at how easy it was to fool these pricks. But as soon as the green-haired boy started to talk about why people should choose him as their representative, some player in the crowd asked him to shut up. Trying to figure out what that had just been, the mint chocolate boy turned perplexedly to the man standing nearby. That person turned out to be a player under the nickname Life is a Documentary, the runner-up in the previous round. "I'm not going to finish listening to your bullshit," the man pronounced, scratching his ear irritably. Looking at him puzzled, the green-haired boy asked the man what had gotten into him. "Mint chocolate boy, right? You've probably decided that everyone spoons in here in general without exception, huh? It's that simple. People gobble up whatever you tell them to, don't they?" Muttered Life is a Documentary, looking at the boy with a smirk. Looking at the man with horror, the green-haired guy couldn't understand what was going on. Did this player really realize the skill he had? No, he probably wasn't talking about that. And while the mint chocolate boy was thinking about it, Life is a Documentary asked him who he was to even choose a representative. Fucking entrepreneur. Not wanting to hear such insults, the boy looked at the man seriously and realized that he was crossing the line. As they say, a bad man is known by his speech. So why does he keep on swearing? But just when the green-haired guy thought this speech was supposed to appease the aggressive player, Life is a Documentary insulted him again by calling him an arsehole. "What are you gonna do? Tell me off? You don't care about life at all, do you?" The man shouted angrily, glaring hatefully at the boy. Dazedly looking at him, the mint chocolate boy couldn't understand why his skill wasn't working for this person. There was simply no such thing. Then, pointing his finger at the dumbfounded players, Life is a Documentary called them underdogs and ordered them to vote for him. He then added that he would have to kill anyone who didn't vote. You're just impossible," came the disappointed voice of the mint chocolate boy. "Do you really think anyone will listen to someone like you? Stop embarrassing yourself and go back where you came from." Hearing such bold words from the green-haired guy, the man standing with his back to him fell silent. In the next second, he drew his dagger sharply and slashed the boy's throat with a U-turn. Feeling like he couldn't breathe, the mint chocolate boy looked at the man with terror in his eyes. And while the guy was hopelessly trying to stop the blood rushing sharply from his throat, the player standing across from him reminded him that he had warned him about this. At this moment, the mint chocolate boy choked on his own blood and fell dead to the ground after losing consciousness. With a glance at the other players, Life is a Documentary started threatening them again, saying that if they didn't vote for him, they would end up like this idiot lying on the ground. As soon as people saw that the man had killed the player, there was panic in the crowd. Hearing the disgruntled shouts in his direction, Life is a Documentary drew a bloody dagger in front of him and offered to attack those who were not satisfied with something. Unwilling to accept what had happened, one person in the crowd shouted that the man had lost his mind. But in response to this reprimand, Life is a Documentary only laughed and said that since no one was going to attack him, he would do it first. In the next instant, he abruptly snapped out of his seat and finished off nearly a dozen people with a few lunges. For this man, this is the perfect situation. There are no police, no journalists, no cameras, so he can kill all he wants. Pointing his dagger at the players standing across from him, Life is a Documentary threatened them that if they didn't vote for him, they would all die in the next round. Words like that put all the people in a state of terror. That's right. Now they will obey this man because they are afraid of him. And if Life is a Documentary stands up as a representative of this region, the first person it will finish off will be Black Scythe. In that case, he'll be number 1. Meanwhile, Rune continued killing the gnolls. The number of enemies had already exceeded 265, and all of the guy's stats had been increased by 100% due to the effect of the Butcher's Rune. Soon, he had already reached the 16th level. Unfortunately, the higher the level, the slower the boy gains points. He killed over 200 monsters in those 2 hours, but only gained 6 levels. But the hunt was quite easy for Rune. It's all thanks to the Butcher's Rune and the Reaper's Rune. Anyway, time is almost up, and that's why it's time for the Black Scythe to go back. The time for voting has expired. It is time to vote. Calling all players of the current region to the starting point begins. Immediately after this system alert, all participants in the second round move to the same location. In addition to the still alive young Min and his bandit group, Co Aren and her bodyguard have also moved into the initial location. And once they were here, who saw something terrible. The entire initial location appeared to be littered with human corpses, with a bloody man standing in the center. Seeing this, Rune immediately guessed that Chojun-sik had achieved superiority this time as well. Cho Jun-sik is the leader of the Jun-sik gang and the second most skilled fighter in the region. Too bad his character is a total shit. It's always better to defuse a time bomb before it explodes. But it's too soon. Hey, Black Scythe, where have you been? I've been waiting for you for so long. Mockingly mouthed Life is a documentary, approaching the guy. Looking at the man, the dark-haired boy asked what he wanted. In response, Chojun explained that he didn't need anything special. He just had a small suggestion. I'll get right to the point. Obey me. Hearing these words, Ryuman asked Chojun why on earth he should obey him. Twirling the bloody dagger in his hand, Life is a documentary smirked and promised to keep the boy alive if he followed his orders. Continuing to stare perplexed at his opponent, Black Scythe wondered if he wanted to fight him. Saying this, the guy ordered the man to kneel down and beg for mercy, promising that if he did, he would let him go in one piece. Oh my god, look at this lunatic! You don't know what's going on! Chojun said irritably, pointing his dagger at the boy. At the same moment, the man was interrupted by Ryuman's angry voice. Are you so dumb you don't understand what I'm saying? Or do you want to die right here? With a cold-blooded utterance, the dark-haired guy pulled out a black scythe from before Amber. That's when Chojun realized that he had the wrong person. How did that boy even have a black scythe? Seeing the frightened face of his opponent, Ryuman mockingly asked what had happened to him. Did he swallow his tongue? Gritting his teeth in anger, Life is a documentary, introduced himself as Chojun-sik, the head of the Jun-sik gang. Did Black Scythe really think that such a man would bow down to someone like him? Adopting a fighting stance, Chojun yelled at the boy to attack him if he didn't value his own life. In response to this, Ryuman only grinned. The man is still as fiery as ever. Well, no more jokes. Things will get a lot more complicated if the Black Scythe shows its strength and gets votes from other players. Now the guy needs to make the region's representatives exactly Chojun-sik. That way he can use it in the third round. Plus, it's time for the angel to show up. Are you all here yet, humans? The winged woman asked, materializing in the sky above the heads of the players. Noticing the angel, Black Scythe swept over to see that Chojun was a happy-go-lucky man. Then, waving it off, the guy advised the man to choose his opponent more carefully next time if he didn't want to die young. After the boy said this, Life is a documentary still stood still for a while. I stared dumbfoundedly at his back. Without taking his hateful gaze off the guy, Chojun made a decision to avenge this humiliation on him after he succeeded in becoming the region's representative. Meanwhile, the angel asked the players if they were able to choose their representative. But noticing the corpses at the main location, the winged woman realized that in those 3 hours, by the looks of it, these people had more than just time to talk. With a thumbs up, she then called for the scheduled vote to proceed. At the same second, voting began to select a representative for the region. Each person has 1 vote. The player with the most votes will become the regional representative. To choose their candidate, each participant needs to look at the person they want to vote for. Players who do not vote within 5 minutes will be eliminated from the round and die. When the voting started, all the people in the main location started turning their heads at their candidates. As Chojun expected, most people immediately looked at him. However, in that same instant, he noticed that not every player chose to obey him. Pointing his finger at some girl, the man shouted in rage why the fuck she wasn't looking at him. The girl tried to convince him that she had already voted, but Chojun wouldn't stop yelling. Life is a documentary. Again promised all the players here that he would finish them all off if they didn't watch from him. Soon the timer to the end of the voting period expired. Angel immediately informed the players that time was up. Luckily, all the dumb people participated in the voting. Now it's time to count the votes. As a result of the voting, the first place was taken by the player under the nickname Life is a Documentary, and the second place went to Black Spit, having fallen behind the leader by about 350 votes. Although Chojun-sik still managed to take the top spot, he was not satisfied with the fact that only half of the region voted for him. He clearly told these creeps to vote for him, therefore the Black Scythe. That's it. Life is a Documentary has become a regional representative. In such a case, as previously agreed, the representative of the region gains the authority of a commander, with which he will be able to order the people around. Laughing evilly, Chojun realized that he would finally be able to make Black Scythe regret not killing him sooner. However, as soon as the man thought about it, he read the terms of using the commander's authority and fell into a stupor. It turned out that this skill can only be used 10 times. In addition, the skill cannot be used on players who have already received the class. Seeing the last condition, Chojun was stunned to realize that players who had obtained the class could ignore his orders. Meanwhile, the angel, smiling, asked the humans if they thought that was the end of it. That's not entirely true. There is a hidden quest in this round. An additional quest for the second round is to advance before voting begins. The goal was to get an improved item and class. And as a reward for completing it, the player would receive a 50% discount on today's item in the store. Of course, almost no one knew about this assignment. And they didn't know what classes and improved subject matter were either. Angel in turn explained that an additional quest window would appear in front of everyone upon reaching level 10. After scratching the back of his head thoughtfully, one of the players asked the winged woman how on earth they could level up if there were no monsters here at all. "What do you mean? The forest is crawling with monsters!" pronounced the angel, looking at him disdainfully. Beginning to leaf through something in the system window, the winged woman asked the players not to get upset about it. A total of only 80,000 people from all regions were able to get a class in this round. And by the way, there's someone in this region who managed to get promoted too. And when people perplexedly asked the angel who this person was, she only snapped her fingers and offered to look at the results of the additional quest. First place in the world standings went to player Black Scythe, who completed the optional quest in just 39 minutes. Most surprisingly, it took the player under the nickname Heavenly Demon, the runner-up, 2.5 hours to get the Dark Knight class. Black Scythe was ranked number 1 in the world and was the only person to receive a class in the region. Moreover, he had obtained a unique Reaper class. No one knows what this class is, but judging by the name, it's pretty damn powerful. Now it's clear to everyone why the number 1 player carries a huge scythe everywhere. And the very fact that Black Scythe had managed to get a class made Cho Jun-sik very angry. He wanted to use the commander's authority and order this guy to play chop suey on Japanese chopsticks. Who would have thought that he would get the class right now? In the second round, rank in the world rankings is determined based on the speed of completing the optional quest. Angel explained, pointing her hand at the ranking behind her. So in our region, only Black Scythe got a class. What's more, you took first place not only in our region, but in all. That's impressive, Black Braid. You have a unique Reaper class and your alias matches it. Please answer, why did you choose that particular alias? Did you really know in advance that you would choose the Reaper class? In response to the angel's question, Ryuman narrated that he didn't know he could get a class that fit his name. It can only mean that becoming a Reaper was fate's destiny for the guy. That's what this woman will think. I mean, even angels don't know how to get the Reaper class. All they know is that it's a unique class. Plus, angels love it when someone talks about destiny. Looking interestedly at the boy, the winged woman pointed out that only one person in this region had gotten a class, and so he alone would not be affected by the commander's authority. Hearing this, the perplexed players asked Angel Sama what this meant. Why wouldn't the commander's authority affect the Black Scythe? Then the angel decided to clarify something to the players before she left. The authority of the commander does not affect people who have received the class, which means that a representative of the region cannot give orders to the Black Scythe. That was exactly what she had in mind. In addition, the wingwoman told people that Life is a Documentary can only use the commander's authority 10 times. So just because he became a representative of the region does not mean that he has unlimited power. The fact that the angel had told all the players about his weakness made Cho Jun-sik very angry. Ignoring the man's infuriated face, the winged woman snapped her fingers, saying that Black Scythe should give out an award for managing to get the class first. As a reward for first place in the current region, the guy was given a low-ranked rare armor of his choice. For the first place in the world ranking, he was given a special award of his choice. The boy immediately decided to choose armor. All in all, he didn't even have to think. The first armor was too heavy and the third was of no use. Having chosen the second option, Ryuman immediately used the second award. This time, he was again offered 3 options to choose from. A 3-fold experience buff for the entire third round, 3,000 gold, or information about the third round. Of course, the guy knows full well what's coming in the third round. Since there will be a bunch of monsters in the next round, it will be most beneficial for him to choose the experience buff. Once the rewards were distributed, all surviving players started heading home. In the next third round, you won't be able to relax. In as little as a month, the real fun will begin. And that I guarantee you. When the angel said this, the virtual dimension collapsed, and the system summarized the results of the second round. Just over 873 million players had survived worldwide. In the current region, the number of players totaled 4,988. On March 1st, 2023, the next round will begin. See you in the next round. Congratulations on your survival. Suddenly waking up in the real world, the frightened man jumped off the bed abruptly. Screaming in pain, the terrified young man opened his eyes and looked at his hands. But as expected, his hands were in place. Turns out that theory was right. As long as you don't die in the virtual world, you will return to the real world in a normal body, regardless of what happened to you before. However, Youngman suddenly stopped cheering. He immediately recalled Black Scythe's face and promised himself to never mess with that person again. That bastard is too heartless. Meanwhile, Aaron and her bodyguard had also returned from the virtual world. When Ansan approached the girl, he praised her and said that she had done a good job. Then, looking at her faithful guard, the actress thanked him for being able to protect her. Seeing the look, Ansan coughed and explained that there was nothing special about it, and it was just his duties as a manager and security guard. Holding a mug of coffee in her hands, Aaron told the bodyguard if there was any way to thank Black Scythe in person. The man in turn said that no one knows the real appearance of this man, and therefore it is impossible to find him. In addition, it seems that he does not want to reveal his identity. Last round, Anson asked Blackbraid for his account number to repay him for saving him. But judging by the fact that this guy immediately said no, he knows you can use the account number to find out his real identity. Seeing the upset look on the actress's face after hearing this, the guard suggested that she show her gratitude by finding that guy in the next round and giving him some item. Upon reflection, Aaron agreed that it was a good idea. After that, she suggested that her guard rest today and think about everything tomorrow. Leaving the girl alone in the penthouse, Ansan left the apartment and headed for the elevator. Already in the elevator, he called President Magyun Lok. After greeting the president, the bodyguard asked if he had gone to bed yet. The interlocutor replied that he had drunk whiskey as soon as he returned from the game. Ansan immediately decided to congratulate the president on getting the Dark Knight class. Magyong Lok in turn replied that it was nothing special, and then asked the man how things were going with Aaron. When the elevator doors opened, the guard revealed that he and Z Aaron were only able to reach the 8th level. Since they were injured in the middle of the round, they were unable to hunt. The president immediately decided to clarify what he meant when he said they had been shot. Walking to his car, Ansan explained that he was just about to report the event to Magyan. "It has to do with the Black Scythe," Ansan said, getting into the car. This information immediately interested Magyan Lok, and he asked the bodyguards to hurry to his hotel. He wants to hear the details in person. The moment Ansan was getting into the driver's seat of his car, some person was discreetly watching him. And as the guard drove out of the underground parking garage, the hooded guy looked on. Ryman had expected this man to immediately go to Magyan Lok as soon as he returned from the virtual world. 10 minutes ago, having just returned to reality, Ryuman lifted himself out of bed and opened the system window. Without hesitation, the guy used location tracking on the target. He targeted Anson Chul. The man was quite close to him, and so Ryuman realized he was still in the penthouse upstairs. But suddenly, the distance to the target began to increase. Anson was changing his location with each passing second, moving further away from the guy. Judging from how quickly the distance changed, the boy immediately realized that the guard was using the elevator, and the only place he could go this early in the morning was to his boss, Magyan Lok. Dressing quickly, Ryuman decided to go and check it out. In the end, the guy didn't regret deciding to follow Ansan right after he had just returned from the virtual world. Shadows cover the moonlight. A perfect night for stalking. Turning away from the window, Magyan Lok decided to be patient for a while, as the report was more important. Black Scythe. Each player knows the first to place in the first and second rounds, but as soon as the president starts thinking about this man, he immediately gets a bad feeling. Was it really the Black Scythe who had attacked his subordinate? If that's the case, then Magyong Lok can't sit idly by. Contacting his right hand is the same as challenging him. No matter who, if he stands in the way of Magyan Lok, that person will definitely not leave him alone. Even if it's the number one player. Sitting on the couch with a glass of whiskey in his hand, the man heard a knock on the door. Ansun Chul had already arrived, and after knocking, he asked if he could come in. When he walked in, Magyan Lok got up from the sofa and greeted Department Head A. Bowing to the president, Ansan said that they were only able to meet because of him. But Magyan didn't immediately understand what the man meant and reminded him that they were in different regions. However, bowing again, Department Head A explained that the mere existence of the president motivated him. Noticing that he was still flattering him just as well, Magyong Lok asked the man to take a seat. After sitting down on the sofa, Ansan tried to convince the president that it was not flattery, but the plain truth. Then, he congratulated his boss for surviving the second round. Laughing, Magyarn asked his interlocutor what kind of survival he was even talking about. After all, the second round was as easy as taking candy from a baby. Looking at the president sipping whiskey, Ansan also congratulated him on his promotion. Magyarn in turn replied that he was just lucky, but the security guard pointed out that some people say that luck is also a skill. Besides, taking second and third place in the region is not easy. There is no greater pride for an A-division chief than to serve someone like Magyarn Lok. Placing the glass of whiskey on the table, the president remarked that, judging by the way Ansan was flattered a lot, he must need something. Glancing at the man, Magyarn inquired as to what exactly the man had come to ask. Realizing that his intentions had been revealed, Ansan asked the president if he knew where to get an advanced item. At that time, Magyarn Lok leaned on the back of the sofa, and after saying that the advanced item wasn't that hard to obtain, he narrated that it would fall out while hunting monsters. But truth be told, Magyarn was only able to get the class so quickly because of the Dark Knight rune he got at the beginning of the game. This happened before the first round even started, when the angel was teaching players how to use the inventory. Each person was given a random rune. Magyarn Lok was lucky enough to receive the Dark Knight rune. This item increases all characteristics and envelops the player's weapon with a dark aura that deals increased damage. Thanks to this rune, the president was able to obtain the Dark Knight class immediately after reaching level 10. He really had a lot of luck in the first round. Getting such a cheater item as a random rune was almost impossible. But even to a subordinate whom he treats like a family member, Magyarn Lok can't tell the whole truth. Every person can change at any time. It's human nature. After thinking about it, the president suggested to the head of Department A that they get back to what they met today for. Who wounded you? Perhaps it was Black Scythe? Magyarn clarified, looking sternly at his subordinate. However, Ansan waved his hands. I explained to the president that this was the man who had saved them. Hearing this, Magyarn Lok asked the man to elaborate on everything. Soon, the head of Department A recounted everything that had happened in the second round. He told how he almost died defending the actress, and that they both would have been dead if Black Scythe hadn't come to their rescue. Although Miss Aaron would have survived either way, she would not have been without the psychological trauma that would have prevented her from working in the entertainment industry. After listening to his subordinate, Magyarn Lok realized that not only had he almost lost a valuable employee this night, but his business had almost collapsed. Taking a glass of whiskey from the table, the president asked what had happened to the attackers. Ansan, in turn, said that Black Scythe had beaten them to a pulp, but had not killed them. The thing is, this guy didn't see any benefit from the death of these scum. Plus, a decrease in the overall player population would result in a decrease in the number of survivors. Holding the glass in his hand, Magyarn Lok agreed with Black Scythe's opinion. But no one knows what those bastards will do in the future. Anyway, thanks to this guy, Magyarn's subordinate and his property were unharmed. Looks like the president owes him a favor. After sipping some expensive whiskey, the man said that this boy should definitely be repaid for his rescue. Ansan said that he had already offered to pay, but Black Scythe had immediately refused and left. And since this guy refused compensation, you can understand that he's afraid to reveal his identity. He really is incredibly cautious. Rising from the couch, the president asked his subordinate to give Black Scythe an award from him the next time they met. He sincerely thanked that guy for saving his employees. In addition, Magyarn asked Ansan to keep an eye on the number 1 player and help him whenever possible. Having said that, the president started to leave for his room, but stopping abruptly, he realized that he had forgotten to ask something important. Those blows. Who inflicted them? Magyarn Lok inquired, glancing at his subordinate grimly. Meanwhile, there was a hooded guy standing in the street not far from the hotel, hiding behind a tree, observing the situation. This Ansan is really a loyal dog. He went to Magyarn Lok's carpet immediately after returning, even though the time is quite late. And since Ryuman now knows perfectly well where the president now resides, it's time to go home. Wandering around would only arouse suspicion. A celebrity sponsored by Magyarn Lok lives in the same house with Rune. The boys need to thank their little brother. If they hadn't been handing out rice cake, they would never have come across Aaron, and Ryuman would never have known that this girl and Ansan Chul were related. If the guy manages to use these neighborhood connections properly, it could help gain Magyarn Lok's trust. Although, he still doesn't know for sure if he should take this person to the 20th round. Dark Knight Magian. Loka's Dark Knight rune is so good that it can be called a cheat. But there are some downsides as well. For example, the lack of a bonus rune for advancement, and the need to become a Dark Knight. But the biggest disadvantage is that in order to use the Dark Aura, the power of the Dark Knight, you need to accumulate a unique mana called Dark Mana. And this Dark Mana cannot be obtained through normal means. In a way, this ability fits Megan Locke's unhealthy fascination. It's pretty dangerous to take on a psychopath. And that's why Ryuman should keep him as a candidate for now and use him whenever possible. There are plenty of other talented people besides Magyarn Locke. Getting into a cab, the guy made the decision to get to work just after dawn. Next day, QS24 convenience store. Sighing heavily, the salesman leaned on the counter and began to think about what he should do next. If things continue like this, the store's revenue will soon drop by half. At that moment, after calling out to her dad, a dark-haired girl ran into the store. When Julie ran up to him, the shopkeeper greeted his daughter with a tired look. After that, the girl asked her father why he was sighing so heavily. The man in turn told her that the sale of lottery tickets had been completely stopped. The government came up with a good reason, but most likely it was because of the players. No one knows what abilities players can use to win lotteries. As an example, the guy who won the Notto lottery 4 times in a row. The store has been struggling lately because of rent and wages. The store owner is not sure what to do next. Smiling, Julie asked her dad not to worry and reminded him that she was graduating very soon. After that, she would be able to help him at the store. But then the girl wondered why she should not take a part-time job and increase the family's earnings. The father, in turn, promised to take care of the money alone, and he asked his daughter to focus on her studies. She got good grades. Isn't she going to college? Julie's dream was to be a doctor. However, with a sigh, the girl informed her father that she had given up on that dream. Is school so important in such a situation? Frowning, the man agreed with his daughter and pointed out that the money was very much needed now. If things got really bad, the girl might die in the next round. After apologizing to his daughter, the store owner said his head has been spinning lately. Then, taking her father's hands in hers, Julie calmed him down and explained that it wasn't his fault. Smiling again, the girl said that she was fine. Moreover, she not only survived the second round, but also managed to get a class. And when the man asked what kind of class this was, Julie asked him to wait a moment, then reached out to his forehead. In the same instant, she activated the skill bestowed upon her after receiving the class. Feeling relieved, the surprised store owner asked his daughter what it was. Julie in turn revealed that it was a blessing skill. She obtained it with the priest class. This skill is able to increase stats, but other than that, it is said to invigorate normal people. The store owner immediately confirmed it. This ability was unbelievable. He actually felt a burst of energy instantly. Promising her father to use the skill on him regularly, Julie asked him to cheer up. After thanking his daughter, the man promised that he would do his best. At that moment, the doors of the store opened and a customer walked inside. Looking closer, the salesman recognized the very same customer. Julie leaned over to her father and asked him if he knew who it was. The man immediately told her that the man was a winner. He won first place in the lottery by writing the same numbers on 100 tickets. After saying hello to the salesman, Ryuman thought he might remember him. Just in case, the guy reminded him that he had bought 100,000 won worth of lottery tickets. After confirming that he simply couldn't forget him, the man inquired as to why the boy had come here. As he approached the cash register, the guy, dumbfounded by the clerk, suddenly bowed and apologized. He then revealed that he had already seen the news. Since he had already taken the top spot several times, Notto's ticket sales had been halted. So Ryuman came here to apologize for unwittingly hurting the store. The man in turn awkwardly waved his hand and asked the guy not to worry about it and explained that it wasn't his fault. The store certainly wouldn't go bankrupt if it didn't sell Notto tickets. However, the boy couldn't bear the thought of someone getting hurt because of him. Holding out the envelope to the store owner, Ryuman said that this was how he wanted to compensate for the loss. When the bewildered seller asked what it was, the guy said that the envelope contained 10 million won. This amount of money shocked the man sitting behind the cash register. He immediately asked the boy to take the money back. But Ryuman, saying that otherwise he would feel guilty, simply left the envelope and walked away without responding to the salesman's cries. Grasping his head, the worried man crouched in his chair, unable to understand how he could accept such a huge amount of money. Then, taking the envelope from her father's hand, Julie promised to run out and return them to that guy. After putting the money in her purse, the girl ran out of the convenience store and went to catch up with the boy. Waving at him, Julie asked the customer to wait a little longer. Hearing this, Ryuman stopped and turned around to look at the girl. "Ryuman, is that you?" Julie, who was glowing with happiness, suddenly asked, looking at the guy. Noticing the boy's perplexed face, the girl tried to remind him that they were in the same class and her name was Min Julie. However, judging by Ryuman's reaction, he didn't even know that this girl was in the same class as him. The guy immediately apologized to her, explaining that he had a bad memory for faces. Although, of course, that's a lie. Min Julie. Ryuman studies in the same class with her, and she is the daughter of a convenience store owner. In the game, she has a unique priest class. When the guy first found out they were from the same class, he was very surprised. That day, he realized that fate was real. And the reason he pretends like he met Mingjuli for the first time is to get her on his side. While Ryuman was pondering this, the girl across from him suggested that he go somewhere and talk. Nodding, the guy didn't refuse and suggested we go to the nearest park. Already in the park, they sat down together on the same bench to discuss what had happened. Taking an envelope of money out of her bag, Julie held it out to the boy, asking him to take it. Surprised to see the envelope, Ryuman asked why the girl decided to return it to him. In response, the classmate explained that the shopkeeper couldn't take so much. Well, 10 million won is a pretty onerous amount of money. The guy gave that money to them, knowing that they wouldn't accept it since they weren't the kind of people who couldn't live with debt, no matter how difficult the circumstances were. Smiling, Julie asked Ryuman to hurry up and take the money before her arm fell off. But the boy only leaned against the back of the bench and replied that he would not take the envelope. As he had told the owner, he was giving the money because he felt guilty for the damage he had caused. This is the least Ryuman can do for his conscience. And when Julie decided to object, saying that the amount was too much, the boy explained that it didn't matter, and he just wanted the girl to take it. Otherwise, he would feel bad and keep thinking about it. After that, Ryuman asked his classmate to tell the owner that the amount was not so large for him. Therefore, the man could accept the envelope with a clear conscience. Having said that, the guy got up from the bench and said goodbye to the girl. However, Julie immediately stopped him and asked him to take the 9 million out of the envelope. Then, looking at her, the guy asked if she could decide that. She would have to ask the convenience store owner. Looking up at the boy, the girl explained that Dad would definitely be uncomfortable with that amount of money. Dad? The owner of the store is your father? I go in there a lot. It's amazing, Ryuman muttered, looking admiringly at the girl. Julie, on the other hand, replied that it was also surprising to her that the first-place winner in Nato turned out to be a friend from her class. But she still cannot believe that Ryuman really did not know that she was his classmate. The girl recognized the guy as soon as he entered the store. In response, the boy apologized again, saying he had a bad memory for faces, then reminded her that this was the first time he and Julie had ever spoken alone. Yes, Ryuman is terribly embarrassed to pretend he doesn't know her, but the main goal is to get her interested in him. I've said before, my name is Min Julie. You and I are in the same class. The girl suddenly spoke out, lifting herself up from the bench. That's my face. You remember now, don't you? Smiling, Ryuman promised that he would never forget her flushed face from now on. At the same moment, reality came crashing down on Julie. What the hell is she doing? She introduces herself to a classmate when graduation is just around the corner. Looking at her warmly, the boy replied that at least now they knew each other well. Besides, no one had said that they would be forbidden to communicate after graduation. Having said that, Ryuman asked a classmate to give him her number. Shall I give you my number? A confused Julie interjected in a flustered voice. With a perplexed look at the girl, the boy asked if something was wrong. He didn't think it was strange to ask for his classmate's number. Agreeing with him, Julie lowered her embarrassed gaze and reached into her bag. Taking out her cell phone, she held it out to the boy. Having written down her phone number, Ryuman suggested that the classmates contact each other more often from now on. And when the girl agreed, the guy gave her the phone and, saying he had to go, said goodbye to her. It wasn't until some time later, when the boy was already gone, that Julie noticed something. In the end, she never got around to giving him that envelope. However, the girl didn't care about that anymore. She still couldn't believe that Ryuman had asked for her phone number. Her heart continues to pound, even though she realizes he asked for the number as a friend. But Julie likes Ryuman. At first, they met by chance. Maybe it was out of pity for him? Or perhaps the girl felt some kind of responsibility for him. But in the end, she followed Ryuman to make sure he made it home safely. And that's when Julie saw Ryuman at his part-time job, as if nothing had happened. That day, she accepted that this guy was much stronger than he seemed at first glance. That's where it all started. That's when this girl became interested in him. But she didn't have the courage to talk to him at school. After that, Julie's feelings for Ryuman increased so much that she couldn't even approach him. Who would have thought they would meet here? From now on, the girl decided for herself to be brave. She is sure that this chance was given to her by heaven. After Ryuman gave her 10 million won, she would no longer be able to pretend like she didn't know him. Well, then Julie decides to ask him to go out to eat with her the next morning. Ryuman sits on his bed in his room, texting with Julie. In a private message, the girl invited the guy to lunch at about 1 p.m. When Ryuman offered to pay for the meal, she refused and replied that she would pay for everything herself. Otherwise, it would be embarrassing for her. Hey, now Julie feels indebted, even offers to pay for lunch. That's a good sign. If the guy manages to befriend her, he can easily make her his ally. And so it's now the boy's responsibility to save Julie and get her to the 20th round. After a while, Ryuman got dressed and went out into the living room. His younger brother was already sitting there hugging a pillow. When Vaughn noticed the guy coming out of the room, he asked where he was going. Ryuman, in turn, replied that he had to meet a friend. An acquaintance? With a girl or something? Vaughn clarified, looking at his brother in surprise. Vaughn asked, wondering if he couldn't see girls now. Going to the door, Ryuman told the boy that he would have lunch at the cafe, after which he asked his younger brother not to wait for him and to eat on time. The front door of the apartment closed, and Ruvan was left to himself as he continued to stare at one point. No way. Is he going on a date? Dazedly whispered the boy, hugging his pillow. Soon, Ryuman and Julie met at a cafe. Looking at the confused girl sitting across the table, the guy asked if she liked steaks. Blushing, Julie didn't immediately hear the question, but then replied that she liked steaks. As she looked into the face of the boy sitting across from her, the girl couldn't believe for a while that she was having lunch with Ryuman. Today was the best day of her life. But now a few minutes had passed and the two were just sitting across from each other, eating steaks in silence. Taking her gaze away, Julie felt that there was some awkwardness between the two of them, and so she decided to make some conversation to dilute the atmosphere. She looked at the boy puzzled and asked him how he had managed to win the lottery. And 4 times in a row! The boy, in turn, told the girl that he had just dreamed about the right numbers. Julie was surprised and asked him how much he had won thanks to his dream. All in all, enough to not have to worry about money for the rest of my life. Really, now you have to worry about your safety, Ryuman told me. After listening to him, the girl changed the topic of conversation and asked the guy what he did in the first round. Continuing to eat steak, Ryuman answered that he had spent a lot of time killing goblins, and when Julie asked what region the boy was in, he said he couldn't remember the name exactly, but there was definitely a number 5 on the end. Sighing, the girl told him that her region name ended in 7. It was a pity that they couldn't play the game together. But of course, this young lady needn't worry about that. She and Ruman will meet again in the game. After the survivors are few and far between, the regions will be united. The two of them immediately began to discuss the game vigorously. Ryuman told the girl that he had already reached the 10th level and had not yet managed to get a class. Julie, looking at him admiringly, replied that she had been lucky enough to find the item needed for the class change. So now she is a priest. Pleased that nothing had changed in this endeavor, the boy wondered what the priest class was. Did it really mean that the girl could cast positive effects like a mage? After confirming this, Julie suggested that the guy take a look at a special buff called Blessing that could increase all stats. And when Ryuman asked the girl to show it to him, she reached out to him and used her skill. The Blessing increased all of the boy's stats by 50%, and the duration of the skill has a limit of 3 hours. The effect is quite strong. Well, it's a unique class for a reason. The effectiveness of this skill will double when Julie reaches the maximum level, so by that time, the buff will be 100%. Still, though it's a long way off, it's pretty great that this girl has Ruman's back right now. First of all, that's why he met her today in the first place. As a reward for the fastest completion of a side quest, the guy is further rewarded with a random bag of gold. From the name, it is clear that inside there is a random amount of gold coins. The size of the amount depends on the characteristic of luck. This means that the more luck points a player has, the bigger the winnings. And so Ryuman decided to thank Julie, as she gave him a chance to get quite a bit of gold. Smiling back, the girl told the boy to just tell her if he needed the buff again. Then, thanking her again, Ryuman reminded Julie that there was something she wanted to tell him. In fact, the girl called Ryuman to this cafe to give him words of gratitude from her father for that money. Having said that, she again promised to return all the money to the guy. But the boy reminded her that they had discussed this a while ago, and he had asked her not to worry about it then. "If you don't want money, I can pay with something else," Julie said suddenly, looking at the boy. After saying that, she pulled out some brightly glowing object from her inventory. Holding out the thing to the surprised Ryuman, the girl told him that she had gotten this while hunting. After some more alone time at the cafe, the two still finished their lunch and agreed to meet again if they managed to survive. After saying goodbye to Julie, Ryuman headed for the nearest park. Stopping where he was, the guy opened the inventory. He didn't expect to be able to obtain a low-ranked purple magic crystal. Due to the vague description, it is still unclear exactly what effect this item will have. But when Ryuman reaches the 20th level, he will be able to recognize the true potential of this crystal. The combo function is only unlocked once the player reaches level 20. Thanks to this, it is possible to combine a weapon with a magic crystal. Additional functions are also unlocked. There are a total of 7 types of magic crystals, a type for each color of the rainbow. Red is damage, orange gives strength, yellow increases luck, green increases dexterity, and blue increases intelligence. Blue decreases susceptibility to damage. Finally, purple is the rarest of all. It falls much rarer than other crystals and increases all characteristics at once. Ryuman was very lucky to get such a rare item for nothing. Apparently, he has high rates of luck in real life. Be that as it may, the guy decided to postpone the crystal issue until he reached level 20, as he now needed to open the pouch for when the buff ran out. Oh, and also, it's time to boost stats with the Butcher's Rune. Especially for this purpose, Ryuman bought 100 live operods. The Butcher's Rune increases all stats by 1% for each kill. And yes, insects count too, as long as it's a living creature. There are no insects in the world of the game, so you have to kill monsters. Fortunately, there is a loophole. "Sorry," Ryuman said sadly, lifting his foot. When the boy crushed the operods with his foot, the casualty counter filled up to 100 almost instantly. All stats were increased by 100% due to the effect of the Butcher's Rune. Finished with that, the guy opened the status window in front of him and looked at his stats. His original 15 luck points had increased dramatically to 45. At this rate, he was going to do well. Ryuman then opened the inventory and took out a small pouch from there. It turned out to be that random bag of gold. Since he definitely won't have higher luck for now, the guy decided to use this item right now. The main question that plagues Ryuman is how much money he will get. Although the indicator of luck affects the amount, it can still vary. In previous times, the guy had gotten between 3,000 and 6,000 gold. But upon opening the random bag of gold this time, Ryuman saw something that had never happened to him before. A random bag of gold was used. You have received 9,999 gold. All the preparations were worth it, because Ryuman received the maximum amount. Now he has as much as 16,249 gold. That's more than enough to acquire an epic item. However, the item the guy needs won't be in the store until 2 weeks from now, and so he shouldn't spend much right now. After a while, Ryuman finally returned to his home. His younger brother was already waiting for him there. Running up to the guy, Vaughn excitedly asked him how the date went. But noticing the perplexed face of his older brother, the boy asked if he had not gone on a date with a girl. Sitting down on the sofa, Ryuman asked him to stop composing and asked him what he had for lunch. Sitting down next to him, one told his brother with a satisfied face that he had ordered himself some black bean noodles. Ryuman looked at him and asked his brother why he hadn't gotten something better. But Vaughn only asked him why he didn't like the black bean noodles. It was then that Ryuman remembered that only a month ago they had been eating nothing. Before, even black bean noodles would have seemed like something incredibly luxurious. And by the way, this guy's bitcoins have already grown to $150 million. And if things continue as they have in the past, the price will collapse in about 2 weeks. So it's time to get rid of them. But before that, Ryuman decided to get a driver's license. The very next day, the guy went to take the theoretical part of the driver's license test. In fact, the boy has taken this test several dozen times already, and so he can easily solve it even with his eyes closed. A few seconds after he sat down at his computer, Ryuman rose from his desk and took his coat off his chair. Not understanding why this guy left so quickly, the examiner didn't stop him and decided to look at his exam results. Opening Ryuman's exam results, the shocked man noticed that this boy had scored 95 points after sitting at the computer for only a few seconds. Yeah, the outcome was obvious. Thanks to the fact that the guy actually has an incredibly huge amount of driving experience, it only took 4 days to get his license. By the way, when you think about it that way, how long has Ryuman been in this time loop? How old is he anyway? Having received a driver's license, the boy immediately ordered himself a supercar, a Lamborghini Aventador. He didn't have to think long about the choice, because that's what he drove during his previous attempts. The car dealership promised Ryuman that the car would arrive in his garage a month after the order was placed. And so it's been 2 weeks since that day. It's time. Bye-bye, Bitcoins. When one noticed his older brother laughing in the chair, he asked why he was so happy. Did something good happen? Punching something on his phone, Ryuman told the boy that he had just sold Bitcoins. Holding a mug of coffee in his hand, Vaughn sat down next to him and asked how much money he had gotten in the end. $300 million, Ryuman replied, dumbfounding his younger brother. Leaping out of his chair, Vaughn clarified whether the $60 million the guy had won in the lottery had grown to 300 in such a short time. The delighted boy immediately remembered how he tried to talk his older brother out of buying Bitcoins a month ago because he didn't think it would be such a success. In fact, Ryuman hadn't expected this either. In previous times, he had received a maximum of 280 million, so it was pure truth. Looking at his older brother, Vaughn asked him if he had sold Bitcoins before the price dropped to keep the profit. Continuing to poke something on his phone, Ryuman confirmed his words. Good thinking, Vaughn remarked contentedly, sipping his coffee. By the way, I just invested all our savings in stocks, Ryuman narrated, shocking his younger brother again. Looking at the guy fearfully, Vaughn asked why he did it. He doesn't know a damn thing about investing, does he? Ryuman, in turn, asked his brother not to worry and said that he had seen everything in a dream. Hearing this, the surprised Vaughn clarified whether the guy had dreamed things again. And this time it was about stocks? Well then, do as you please, the boy said contentedly, looking trustingly at his older brother. Ryuman, of course, doesn't blame Vaughn for having doubts, but Ryuman himself knows the future perfectly well and therefore does not worry about it at all. A company ranked 85th on Kosdaq with a capital of $900 million. Heavenly Demon Consulting Corporation. This company is run by Magyung Lok. Although it is still relatively small and unknown, after developing a special system at the end of the 4th round, his company's success will skyrocket. Since Ryuman knows that this man's company will rise, then investing in it would be a great decision. If the guy buys a significant portion of the shares now and gains some influence over the company, he will gain a lot of benefit and power as the majority holder in the future. First, the boy needs to invest $280 million and buy out 31% of the company. At that moment, the lad's musings were interrupted by someone's pleading. Turning his head, Ryuman saw his brother praying that his dream would come true again. Okay, we're getting distracted. Anyway, the deed was done. Now all that's left is to acquire the items. Midnight of the same day. Lying in bed, Ryuman opened the game store and began to look through the catalog. He's been saving up gold for this moment. If you have gold, you can buy items and general skills. It's as simple as that. And even though all of these items and skills are of normal rank, it doesn't mean that rare and epic items can't be bought. Item of the day. This feature allows you to buy a random item that is updated every day. It's often quite difficult to stumble upon what you need because every day the item is completely random. But for Ryuman, this is not a problem because he knows when something will appear. And there will be exactly what he needs in the store today. That's it! The bone necklace! This item increases intelligence and attack speed. For such valuable effects, it's quite cheap. It was exactly what the guy was expecting, so he could safely splurge on it. Deciding not to delay the purchase, the boy opened the inventory. From there, he pulled out a coupon for the 50% discount he'd gotten for the promotion quest. And if Ryuman buys this item at a 50% discount off the coupon, the price will come out much lower. But the moment the guy acquired the bone necklace, he noticed something rather nice. He's got a whole bunch of gold left. Originally, the guy was going to spend what was left in gold on a set of regular armor. But if he accumulates another 6,000, he'll have enough for a general skill. And that's better than regular armor. In this case, the boys need to urgently raise 6,000 gold. Fortunately, there will be a lot of monsters on the 3rd round, the 1st of March in the year 2023. The day of the beginning of the 3rd round has arrived. The location the players moved to resembled a ruined village. However, even though this village was just a mountain of ruins, it was surrounded by high protective walls all around it. At the same moment, people noticed a huge glowing thing in the center of the main square. The main question was what they were to do in this round. Of course, the place is unfamiliar, and so it's no wonder everyone is excited and confused. Only Chojun Sik, a player under the nickname Life is a Documentary, is relatively confident. At this point, one person in the crowd shouted out, reminding the man that he was a representative of the region. The other players immediately began to discuss Cho Jun-sik, whispering amongst themselves that he was most likely a mobster. After all, he had forced everyone to vote for him last round by threatening to kill him. People's discontent has begun to grow. Most people think that Black Scythe should be the server representative, not this maniac. Then, one of the guys, hearing his friend expressing his displeasure towards the representative, asked him to keep his voice down because this maniac could hear everything. Besides, he has the skill of submission. But the friend only waved his hands and reminded the boy that this skill only had 10 uses, and therefore there was nothing to worry about. Shitty bugs! Shut your mouths quick! Life is a documentary, shouted angrily, not wanting to hear any more displeasure directed at him. But such crude expressions have only prompted the disgruntled. They can't understand why the man is swearing like that. He behaves as if he has no control over his speech at all. Which one of you scumbags is talking shit about me? The spokesman shouted angrily, pointing his finger at the crowd of people. Realizing that he would not be able to identify the culprits, the man became even more angry. He had thought it would happen like this. Why didn't the winged bitch keep her mouth shut and tell everyone about the weakness of this skill? At this moment, a sturdy man approached Chojun. Bowing respectfully, Youngman immediately greeted him. Seeing the guy, a surprised Cho Jun-sik wondered what he was doing here. Dear Mr. Life is a documentary. The boss of Jun-sik's gang, Cho Jun-sik Sunbae. I've come to greet you, shouted the boy, looking at the man across from him. Hearing the prefix Sunbae, Cho-jun asked the guy who he was to address him like that. After apologizing, Youngman explained that he was just a guy who dreamed of becoming a gangster. Such a statement greatly surprised the representative of the region. Does he dream of becoming a bandit? Is he a complete freak? Meanwhile, Youngman didn't stop admiring and said, Cho Jun-sik is his role model. It was his gang that he had always wanted to join. Looking at the boy perplexed, Life is a documentary, asked why he needed it. Then the lad fell on his knees and swore to obey and serve Chojun as his elder brother for the rest of his life. Then he earnestly asked the man to accept him into his ranks. Yes, Chojun-sik has seen a lot of lunatics in his long life, but this is the first time he's met such a crazy person. He likes this guy's attitude. The man immediately ordered the boy to his feet. When the guy complied, the server representative asked if he had any problems with his eyesight or hearing. Didn't he notice that the reputation of Life is a documentary is now ruined? Why does he still want to serve him? Punching himself in the chest, Youngman replied that he doesn't care about that. He respects Cho Jun-sik, and that's what matters. He doesn't care what anyone else thinks. All the guy cares about is that a man takes him into his gang, and the representative of the region liked this answer. He immediately promised the boy to take responsibility for his upbringing. Thank you! I'm honored! In an excited voice, Youngman shouted out, bowing again. Upon seeing this scene, the other players began to wonder why this guy decided to fraternize with Life as a documentary. On the other hand, this boy is probably crazy too. As they say, a fisherman sees a fisherman from afar. Watching what's going on, Ryoman was reassured by the fact that Youngman joined Jung-sik's gang this time too. It's a good thing that the story doesn't change much. But what, men? Are you gathered? Suddenly came the voice of an angel appearing in the sky above the players. This time there were 9 dozen fewer players than in the second round. Hearing this from the winged woman, the people standing in the square of the destroyed village were surprised that their number had decreased. At the same moment, the system windows with the conditions of the third round popped up in front of all of them. The third round is coming up. The main task, defend the relic for 3 hours. There are just over 850 million participants left in all regions. In the current region, ESKS 45-5, there are exactly 4,900 participants left. This time, only a quarter of the players will make it to the next round. Pensively looking at the system windows in front of their faces, people wondered how the number of participants could have decreased. After all, it was impossible for more than 100 people to have died in the last round. Angel, however, pointed out that it was unlikely that such a large number of youngsters could have died their natural deaths in just a month. It was more likely that the fight was going on even in the real world. And while the winged woman was saying this, one guy in the crowd screamed in horror, drawing the others' attention to the number of past participants. That's when the other players noticed that the number of those who had passed had dropped to 1,225, which was only a quarter of the total number of participants. A man in the crowd looked at the angel in panic and asked if there was a mistake. A mistake? The winged woman asked, unable to hold back a gloating laugh. What do you want to hear? No mistakes? I can see you're overwhelmed by the number of seats, but you've obviously forgotten something. Only half survive each round. But in the last round, there were an unlimited number of seats. So it makes sense that only a quarter would remain this time, doesn't it? It's perfectly fair. All you have to do is try to get into that 25%. I will now explain what will happen in the third round. Every half hour, monsters from my legion will emerge from the city gates. Their target is the relic in the center of this village. There will be 4 waves in all. You must all work together to protect this relic. For defending the relic for 3 hours, you will receive an additional reward. And if you fail the task, you will be severely punished. Finally, regardless of whether or not you can protect the relic, you will all be assigned a rank based on the number of monsters you kill. This round, there will be many more monsters than usual, but they will only possess a third of their normal strength. It's already easier, isn't it? Of course, the amount of gold and experience from them will also be cut by 2/3. After listening to the angel with a smirk, Chujun-sik realized that he could easily pass this test. After all he had to do was kill a lot of monsters. This round would indeed be easy for the man, especially since he had a submission skill. I almost forgot, said the angel suddenly, clapping her hands together. The spokesperson chosen last round is Life is a Documentary, right? As of this round, he can use the commander's authority, but you're all probably wondering what happens if the representative dies. If he dies due to monsters, accident, or natural cause, his place will be left empty. However, there is an exception. What do you think happens if a region representative falls at the hands of another player? That's right. In that case, the assassin himself will become a representative of the region and get 10 uses of the commander's authority. That's it! The monsters will appear in 10 minutes. For the next 3 hours, work as a team to survive. But to tell you the truth, I'm not sure you can do it. After saying this, the angel smiled haughtily and disappeared. God damn it, you stupid bitch! Chojun-sik yelled in rage, glaring hatefully at the disappearing angel. Then, sensing the greedy gazes of the other players, the man turned around angrily. Behind him, 3 angry men were already standing behind him, armed with daggers and swords. Taking a knife out of his inventory, the infuriated regional representative suggested they attack him if they didn't value their lives. The guy with the sword grinned, noting that the dude was only pretending to be dangerous, but he only had 10 uses of the skill. Angel had clearly said that whoever killed Life is a documentary would become a spokesman. So, anyone would be better suited for that role than this maniac. But at that moment, the other players heard the heavy footsteps of a certain man behind them. It turned out to be Black Scythe, heading straight for the representative of the region while holding his weapon in his hand. When the guy came closer to him, a startled Chojun-sik asked him what it was he was going to do. But Ryuman, walking by, asked the man not to be afraid and explained that he just wanted to talk. Smiling nervously, Life is a Documentary asked what made the boy think he was afraid. He then asked Black Scythe to quickly tell him what he came for and get the hell out of here. Then, Ryuman got straight to the point and, surprising the man, said that he had a business proposal. I understand you're in a difficult situation, Black Scythe remarked. And so, would you like to enlist my protection? And while Chojun looked at him perplexed, the guy added that he would guard the man from hostile players and would also take full responsibility for his safety and accompany him everywhere. It came as a surprise to other players that Black Scythe volunteered to defend Life is a Documentary. This means that they will now have to fight the strongest player in the world to get a representative. Looking at the indignant people behind him, Chojun was surprised at how much they honored Black Scythe. The man hadn't agreed yet, and they had already managed to give up. Yes, the offers were indeed tempting. However, there is a price for everything. Looking back at the dark-haired boy, the regional representative asked what he wanted in return. Closing his eyes, Ryuman replied that there was nothing special about his request. You will simply obey my orders. Those are my terms, uttered the boy, looking coldly at the man. Of course, Chojun was surprised by such a condition. It means that Black Scythe wants to make him his pawn, doesn't it? Not understanding what the point of this was, the man asked the boy why he needed it and what orders he was going to give. In response, Ryuman said that he could not reveal this information. The man would just have to obey all his commands unconditionally, and Chojun shouldn't care about the details. With his dagger clutched tightly in his hand, the regional representative was not going to accept such conditions. Did this jerk really think that the leader of one of the most notorious gangs in Korea would agree to such a thing? But then Choo-jun wondered what this guy would do to him if he refused. It was unlikely that he would pounce on him in broad daylight. However, that wasn't certain. "Choose. Everyone is waiting for your answer," muttered Black Scythe, looking coldly at the region's representative. Looking up at the boy, Choo-jun-sik frowned and suddenly said, "I decline your offer." Ryuman knew that this man would respond that way. There was no way in hell this bastard would agree to such humiliating conditions. The other players were overjoyed when they heard the rejection. That jerk probably couldn't accept the offer because of his pride. He could have accepted the offer and hunted monsters in peace. There are only two explanations for this choice. Either he is too proud, or he is not afraid of other players at all. Looking at the people who had already prepared to attack Chojun, Ryuman remembered that everything was happening exactly the same as his last attempt. And so now, the guy must finish what he started. With an indifferent glance at the regional representative, Black Scythe didn't bother to change his mind. Since he himself had decided to refuse, the boy would not bother him anymore. Having said that, the guy turned around and added that now it makes absolutely no difference to him whether the world as a documentary dies or survives. After hearing that the Black Scythe was not going to interfere in the showdown between the players and the representative, people realized that they could now do whatever they wanted with this maniac. Noticing the hostile players slowly approaching him, Chojun raised his dagger and wondered if he should still agree before it was too late. At the same moment, the system announced that the first wave was about to hit. It then advised players to prepare for the appearance of monsters and protect the relic at all costs. In half an hour, regardless of the number of surviving monsters, the second wave would appear. Time's up. Upon seeing this alert from the system, all players lined up near the relic, waiting for the enemy to approach. Meanwhile, Chojun-sik realized that he couldn't fight shoulder to shoulder with people who wanted him dead. When it came to him, the man decided to do the quest alone. At the same second, he noticed Black Scythe walking away somewhere. Suspecting something wrong, the representatives of the region decided to follow the dark-haired guy. Hiding behind the wall of one of the buildings in the village, Chojun wondered where this boy might be heading. Is he really going to the gate to fight the monsters alone? At the same instant, a system voice rang out, announcing the start of the first wave. The doors of the main gate of the defense wall immediately swung open. There are currently 4,900 players on the server. There are exactly twice as many weakened goblins. They number as many as 9,800. Due to the peculiarity of the round, goblins are 3 times weaker than normal. We hope you'll do well. We wish you good luck. Such an unbelievable huge number of opponents was just some kind of madness. After realizing this, Chojun decided to first hide and observe the situation. But the main question on the man's mind was what Black Scythe was up to. Was he really going to mow down the goblins at the entrance to the village alone? The gate is certainly not very wide, but at least 10 monsters can definitely pass through it at a time. Was this dark-haired guy so confident that he thought he could easily handle 10 goblins? Climbing to the roof of one of the buildings nearby, Chojun began to watch Black Scythe standing in front of the gate that opened. The man is sure the bastard is bluffing. He's not that strong. He's probably just going to stand there for a while and then run away. Meanwhile, the hordes of monsters had already rushed into the ruined village, and upon spotting Ryuman in front of them, they immediately pounced on him. The boy in turn gripped the Black Scythe tightly with both hands and wrapped it behind his back. With a single swing of his weapon, he made a long-range attack across the square, unleashing a red blade at his opponents. Afterward, raising his head, the boy noticed the approaching danger. Several goblins leapt into the air, dodging Ryuman's attack, and pounced on him, waving their daggers. Then the guy jumped into the air towards them as well. In 1 second, he had traveled several meters, running up behind his enemies and slicing each of them in half. Surprised as he watched this battle, Chojun realized that Black Scythe was indeed incredibly strong. Without taking his eyes off the rampaging guy, the man wondered if everyone would be as powerful as him when they reached level 16. But be that as it may, now is not the time to watch from the sidelines. Chojun needs to pump up his characteristics too. That's right. He shouldn't just stand by and watch other players fight goblins. While Black Scythe was holding back the monsters from the main entrance, the goblins had managed to break through the west gate. Seeing this, the region representative ran out of the building and ran to fight against the monsters as well. "Come here, you walk-in experience!" shrieked the man, running up to one of the goblins. With one sharp lunge, he immediately finished off the monster that attacked him. At the same instant, Chujun sensed an approaching opponent behind him. Turning around, he thrust the blade of his dagger into the goblin's face with lightning speed. With a smirk as he took the knife out of the enemy, the man realized that this test would be very easy for him, as he would easily be able to anticipate the goblin's trajectory thanks to his detection rune. But as soon as the regional representative thought about it, an arrow flew past his head. Scratching his ear, the arrow flew past and embedded itself in the opposite wall. Trying to find who shot him, the man remembered that there were no goblin archers before, which can only mean that one of the players tried to kill Chojun. But who did it? And while the regional representative was trying to find the bastard, another player ran up to him and stabbed a sharper spear into his stomach with joyous shouts. "You fucking asshole!" Chujun shrieked in rage, grabbing the spear sticking out of his stomach with his hand. Pulling the sharp tip from his abdomen, the man yanked the spear toward him and swung the dagger. The very next second, he plunged the knife blade into the chest of the guy who attacked him. Taking the dagger out of his opponent's body, Chojun began to strike the boy with blow after blow with furious shouts. Just as suddenly, an arrow flew past his face again. That's when the region's representative saw the archer standing alone in the square among the corpses of men and goblins. Snatching the spear from the dead opponent's hands, the enraged Chojun raised the weapon above his head. The dazed archer, in turn, had already taken out a new arrow and was aiming at the representative of the region. But he proved too slow, and so the next instant, his head was pierced through by a spear. Chujun didn't expect more trouble from the players than the monsters. If only he wasn't a representative of the region, none of this would have happened either. Bullshit role of spokesman! Had it been his will, he would have just handed it off to someone else. Holding his stomach, the man realized that he needed to accept Black Scythe's help. But no matter what happened, Chujun would still not bend to this guy. He's a man and he has his pride, and so right now he needs to find some way out of this situation on his own. He needs to find a way to safely hunt monsters without the threat of players. Thinking about it, Chojun noticed a top 3 player of this region under the nickname Black Lizard in My Hand nearby. That's the kind of man he needed. Approaching the top 3 player, the man called out to him, "Black Dragon in my right hand, you will now protect me," said the representative of the region, using his skill on the player. Meanwhile, Black Scythe continued to kill monsters one after another, and the number of his victims reached 502. Thanks to the recently obtained skeleton necklace, the guy's attack speed was increased by 25%. He also had a 3-fold increase in experience, and thanks to the Butcher's rune, all of his stats had already increased by 100%. After finishing off another opponent, the boy opened a status window right during the fight. In all this time, he had already managed to get as much as 2,000 gold. At this rate, he could easily accumulate 20,000 gold for the second wave. No, Ryuman's goal right now was to accumulate as much gold as possible already in this round and buy 2 general skills. If he succeeds, he will be able to obtain the True Heart Thoughts rune. Thinking about it, the boy sensed the approach of an enemy behind him. Abruptly turning around, he finished off several opponents with a single blow. Seeing the ease with which this man dealt with their comrades, the other goblins fearfully stopped in place and looked at him uncertainly. "You won't attack? Then I will," Ryuman said coldly, leaping out of his seat in the direction of the goblins. After a while, a loud sound was heard in the center of the village. All the living and dead goblins began to gradually disappear. The system immediately announced to the surviving players that they had managed to repel the first wave of the offensive. At the end of the first wave, 3,933 players survived and 967 died. As a reward, all surviving players received 500 gold coins each, 967 dead. Even though they were weaker than the goblins, Ryuman still felt sorry for them. But anyway, the guy was only interested in one person right now, Chujun Sik. As expected, he managed to survive. Well, he's going to have a hard time getting through this round. Meanwhile, the representative of the region himself did not stop looking around in anticipation of an attempt on his life. All through this wave, some dude was walking behind him, not killing goblins. Deciding that this was the perfect moment to finish off the representatives of the region, the guy ran up to him from behind and swung a knife. At the same second, a top 3 player ran up to him and stabbed the boy in the shoulder with an axe. Satisfyingly looking at the black dragon in my right hand, Chojun was once again convinced that the commander's authority skill was really good. Thanks to this, the man was able to survive the first wave. However, in addition to the people subordinated by the special skill, The representatives of the region were followed by Youngman and his bandit company. But as soon as Chojun thought of them, he immediately felt a sharp pain in his stomach. The bleeding is very heavy. The main question now on the man's mind is whether he can hold out the rest of the time. But as it is, he has no other choice. Chojun Sik will cling for his life and will surely make it through this round. At the same moment, there was a loud sound that marked the beginning of the first wave last time. As expected, the second wave began. This time, there were also twice as many weak goblins as players. But unlike the last wave, hobgoblins were added to the weak goblins. According to the terms of the round, all monsters have access to only a third of their normal strength. After wishing the participants good luck in battle, the system went silent again. Black Scythe single-handedly managed to hold back one of the village gates. And this time, he intends to do the same. With a single swing of his scythe, Rune once again cut down several dozen monsters. Immediately afterward, he jumped into the air. While in the sky, he also finished off several goblins, chopping each of them in half with a slight movement. Soon, there was already a huge pile of dead monsters lying at the main gate of the village. The guy had already reached the 20th level. As was the rule, his rank was immediately raised from apprentice to commoner. Additionally, thanks to reaching level 20, Ryuman will now be able to use combining to create unique items that cannot be obtained from the store. In addition, due to the rank increase, the Seal of Death was strengthened, and the additional damage of this seal was increased from 100% to 120. The Reaper's exclusive skill, Night of Death, was also learned. The exclusive skill, Night of Death, creates an artificial night, spreading the energy of darkness within a radius of 500 meters. The next skill will be learned at level 40. The Night of Death combines well with the Reaper rune, as it becomes stronger at night. It was simply unbelievable that Ryuman had already managed to increase the additional damage of the Seal of Death to 120% at this stage and gained a new skill at the same time. And while the guy was examining the skills and improvements he had just received, he was already being pounced upon by the goblins who had run into the gate. "Hey there, and I just learned a new skill," said the mockingly smiling guy, glancing at his enemies. "The Night of Death." He immediately spoke coldly, terrifying the monsters. In the next second, the heads of the sightless goblins flew off their shoulders. And while his opponents were trying to figure out what was even going on, Ryuman kept throwing punches, killing them one by one. The monsters were dying before they even realized who their opponent was. Soon, Black Scythe had finished off the last goblin that ran into the main gate of the defense walls. Finished testing his new skill, the guy landed gently on the ground. The second wave had just begun, and behind him already lay mountains of goblin corpses. After a while, the second wave was over. 3,343 players survived, and 590 died. Each participant received 500 gold as a reward for surviving. After opening the store, Ryuman decided to buy a couple of general skills while he had time to relax. The first skill he wanted to buy was Presence Detection. This skill allows the wielder to detect all targets within a 30-meter radius. And it looks like there are only goblins and corpses within 30 meters of Ryuman. In this case, the guy decided to accumulate another 20,000 gold. A few minutes later, the third wave began, in which the village was attacked by weak hobgoblins, whose numbers, as always, were twice as many as the surviving players. Some time passed, and the players still managed to repel the third wave. The fourth wave already had 3,001 players and 6,002 weak hobgoblins. In the end, the participants managed to repel the penultimate, fourth wave as well, while preventing the monsters from even touching the relic. There's still 1 hour left before this hell ends. Therefore, if Chojun can hold on for another hour, he will stay alive. Even though he's used the commander's authority 10 times already, these lowlifes are pretty good at protecting him, and that's why the man has managed to live up to this point. At the same moment, the system notified the participants of the beginning of the fifth wave. 2,700 players will be opposed by as many as 10,800 gnolls. Such a huge number of opponents struck Chujun hard, but he didn't worry about it. It was a good chance for him to set a new record. Now this man wants to get stronger. He wants to get stronger and rip out the throats of everyone who looks down on him. But just thinking about it, the representative of the region heard his subordinates screaming not far from him. Angry players who were not under the commander's authority began killing Chojun's subordinates in an attempt to break through to their leader. Then, grabbing two guys hypnotized by the commander's authority, Chojun yelled to them to stand to the end and not let the enemies pass through their defenses. But in the same instant, the two were killed by the suddenly arriving arrows. Soon there were only 3 living players left in Chojun's command. Noticing the shit he'd gotten himself into, the man realized he couldn't stay here. Now is not the time to think about it, so he needs to get out of here now. He just needs to get over this wave. Just this wave. But while running away from the enraged players, Chojun came across Black Scythe, still single-handedly holding back the main gate of the village. Running up to the guy, the man panicked and accepted his offer, promising to do whatever he said in exchange for protection. Seeing the boy's perplexed face, the regional representative shouted again that he was accepting his offer. "I refuse," Black Scythe suddenly uttered, glaring coldly at life as a documentary. Ryuman then reminded the man that he didn't care whether he died or survived, and suggested that he figure things out for himself. And when the guy turned around, Chojun asked him in a panic why he was doing this. The man said he would become his servant. So why is the boy refusing? In response, Ryuman explained without turning around that he didn't need a servant who didn't even have the authority of a commander. Tensely clenching his teeth, Chojun couldn't believe that this bastard had called him useless. If only he had known this would happen, he would have agreed sooner. However, the region's representatives no longer had time to reflect on the past. All the players who wished him dead had seen the way this maniac had been denied by the Black Scythe. Yeah, this scum's nickname is really not unreasonable. Life is a documentary about how one asshole lost his life over his pride. Now it won't be difficult for the players to kill him. This man is mortally wounded and has been bleeding for a long time. Hell, even if I die, at least I'll take at least one of you to the grave with me. Chojun wailed weightily, grabbing a dagger from his inventory. But out of the blue, Youngman came out of the crowd and offered Chojun Sunbae help since he was so tired. "That's right, I've got you! If I get out of here alive, I'll take good care of you," shouted the regional representative joyfully when he saw his faithful ward. At the same second, Youngman, who had come closer, hit his boss on the cheek with great force with his fist. From such a strong blow, Chojun fell to the ground without strength. And while he was holding his face while trying to recover from this attack, Youngman had already approached him. "Mr. Sunbae, you don't have to worry, I'll kill you quickly," muttered the guy, looking at his victim with a creepy smile. After saying that, he grabbed the man by the scruff of his neck and lifted him off the ground. In the next instant, he struck a fist on his cheek. The guy then proceeded to brutally deliver blow after blow without stopping. Each of his attacks literally left dents in his victim's skull. Life as a documentary player, Chojun-sik was betrayed. He was betrayed by Youngman, who swore allegiance to him. Soon, the region's representative, a player under the nickname Life is a Documentary, was killed by a kick to the skull. The power of the representative has passed to the assassin. Youngman has become the new representative of the ESKS 45-5 region. Having gained the authority of a commander, the man realized that now, if he tried his best, he could control Xi'aren however he wanted. He will make good use of the commander's authority. Much better than that mediocre Chojun-sik. In fact, he only died because he kept running away. What a shame, Youngman thought disdainfully as he turned away from the former gang leader Jun-sik, who had been killed by him. As he approached the other players, the man began to brag to them about how he had beaten up that maniac. The men looked at him tensely and grudgingly agreed that it was really cool. But in their heads, they were thinking how awful that bastard was. He beat a man to death with his bare hands and didn't bat an eye. This dude is a crazy psychopath. Then some players remembered that this particular asshole was sucking up to that late gangster. So it's like he was planning to take him down from the start? Most people were starting to get disgruntled again about having such a nutjob as a representative of the region. With a smirk as he looked at the outraged players, Youngman realized that they would try to kill him from now on. However, unfortunately for them, they would not succeed. Abruptly turning around, the man immediately rushed towards the main gate. Seeing Black Scythe wiping the monster's blood from his face, he immediately called out to him. When the boy asked him what was wrong, Youngman told him that he now had the authority of a commander. Still not understanding what he was getting at, Ryuman asked the man what he wanted. "The offer you gave to the Life as a Documentary player, I accept it. In other words, I will do whatever you say. In return, please protect me," Youngman explained while placing his hand on his chest. This man's plan is to gain the support of Black Scythe. This guy wouldn't help Chojun-sik due to the fact that he didn't have the authority of a commander, so Youngman's offer he should definitely accept. However, looking at him indifferently, Ryuman replied that he didn't like the way the man spoke. If he kneels and begs, then boy, so be it. Think it over his proposal. Thinking that he didn't hear him, Youngman tried again to explain to the boy that he had the authority of a commander, but Black Scythe only asked his interlocutor what he should do about it. You don't seem to get it, but you need this, not me. You want my protection? Get on your knees and beg, spoke the dark-haired boy, looking at the man with a smile. Of course, such conditions didn't please Youngman, but the pissed-off players standing behind him by their mere appearance made him make a quick decision. I will do whatever you say, so please use me as a servant. I beg you, Black Scythe, said the man, falling to his knees. Ryuman had already seen the scene so many times that he was getting a little tired of it. But unlike Chojin Sik, Youngman can be useful, for now. After looking at the man kneeling at his feet for a while longer, Black Scythe still accepted his offer. And when an overjoyed Youngman started bowing to him even more intensely, the guy ordered him to stop, saying that he didn't want to see his pathetic face anymore. After saying this, Ryuman stepped forward, shielding his new subordinate from the angry players. The armed men tensely looked at him and began to discuss with each other about what they should do next. Would Black Scythe really protect Youngman? What if they all attacked him together? Hearing such a crazy suggestion, one of the players reminded the others that Black Scythe could fight a bunch of opponents alone. Normal people just don't stand a chance against him. I'll help you make your decision, Ryuman suddenly said, drawing the attention of all the players. You have two options. You can forget about the region representative and go hunting monsters, or you can choose to die at my hands. I would recommend the first option if possible, but I'm fine with the second as well, as I wouldn't consider someone who would raise a sword at me to be a human being. After listening to this incredibly convincing speech, the furious people immediately calmed down and looked at the guy dumbfounded. In the end, all players made the decision to go and do their own thing rather than waste time trying to win back the region representative. Black Scythe is really impressive. All the detractors immediately retreated after his words. Even though he's scary as an enemy, there's no more reliable ally for Youngman than this guy. Looks like it's going to be over soon. The players will now quietly mop up the fifth wave of offense and return home. However, Ryuman feels like it would be a little sad if it just ended. At the same moment, the fellow turned to his subordinate to issue him an order. Use every attempt at commander authority to break the relic. Looking at his master in surprise, Youngman asked why he needed to break the relic. After all, as the angel said, if one failed to protect the relic, everyone would receive a huge penalty. Besides, if a man uses every attempt of the commander's authority, Tons won't be able to make Zrn his slave. Unwilling to accept this reality, Youngman awkwardly asked his host if he could ask him a question. But Ryuman ordered him to shut up and do as he was told. However, even though he was forbidden to speak, the man still clarified if he was definitely not allowed to use only 9 out of 10 attempts. Then Black Scythe told him to do as he was ordered if he didn't want to die. Such words immediately persuaded the man to stop resisting. Ryuman then proceeded to tell his subordinate on whom he should cast the effect of the commander's authority. Shim Song Yu, Little Chili Pepper. Don't bother me. Spring, summer, fall. After naming these names, the guy demanded that Youngman order all of these people to break the relic. But after hearing those names, Youngman realized that they were the same as his friends' names. Did that dude do that on purpose? After realizing what the man was going to do to them, his friends told him not to even think about it. Youngman, in turn, only waved his hands and, saying that he was sorry, explained that it was Black Scythe's order. Don't bother me. Shim Sungyu? Little Chili Peppers. Spring, summer, fall, break down the relic. Youngman called out a few more names and soon all the surviving players had an alert from the system flashing in their faces that the relic had been attacked. The 10 people under the influence of the commander's authority began to break the relic in the center of the square together. Noticing this, the other players started asking these crazy people to stop it. What did they want, a fine? Some, running up to them, began trying to pull these players away from the relic. And others decided to resort to radical measures and began to simply kill these madmen. However, it was too late. The relic was broken. The main quest has failed. A representative of divine retribution will be summoned as a penalty for failing for 30 minutes. Save yourself from the representative of divine retribution. Until time runs out, the round will not be completed. The additional hidden quest of the third round has begun. Reward for success, 3,000 gold. When most players heard the rewards for this hidden extra quest, they were overjoyed. After all, they would have been given only 2,000 gold each for protecting the relic. The reward was higher than the reward for mopping up the fifth wave. That's why Black Scythe used Youngman to destroy the relic. but the reason why he didn't destroy the relic himself was quite simple. The system easily determined that the relic had been attacked by players. As a result, it distributed the penalty among the 10 players responsible for the incident. All the characteristics of these people were reduced by 50%. After hearing this from the system, the guys who received the penalty started blaming Youngman. The man in turn sincerely apologized to his friends, explaining that he didn't think they would receive a penalty. However, Youngman himself shouldn't have relaxed either. The system also penalized the regional representative for failing to protect the relic. All of the representative's characteristics were permanently reduced by 50%. After reading this information in the system window that popped up in front of his face, Youngman kicked the stone wall in fury. A permanent reduction in stats was a very cruel penalty. However, Rune doesn't care about that now, because he should prepare to kill the representative of divine retribution. To begin with, the guy decided to buy the usual items for the extra gold. It would be quite easy for him to kill the representative of divine retribution if he increased his characteristics a bit. Polishing the game store a bit, the boy bought himself an assassin's hood. In addition to this, he acquired nimble boots. But he wasn't going to use these things without improvements. His second step was to use the merge menu. The first thing to do is to place the desired item in the center, and then combine that with the magic crystal. With such uncomplicated movements, Rune combined the skeleton necklace with the magic crystal and increased all of the item's characteristics by 1 point. A guy can only put one magic crystal in each item. A little more poking around in the merge menu improved all his stuff a bit. While low-ranked magic crystals aren't much help, it's still better than nothing. Meanwhile, while Rune was dealing with the association window, the secret additional quest had already begun. Unlike past quests where you had to kill as many monsters as possible, here you just have to last half an hour. That's right, players will just have to run away from the monster and dodge. However, among all of them, Rune was the only one who knew that the representative of divine retribution couldn't run away so easily. In the past, when the guy had specifically launched this additional quest, only 500 people had survived out of the 2,700 people left. Even just surviving is incredibly difficult. The representative of divine retribution is a boss that collectively can barely be defeated by 5 level 40 players. Rune, on the other hand, is going to kill him now and get the maximum possible reward. Guy has a title obtained after killing the angel Brielle. The title, First Angel Killer, doubles all characteristics when fighting against a sacred creature. And the representative of divine retribution is precisely a sacred being. After seeing the enemy in front of them, the players began to discuss with each other whether this task was too simple. They just need to survive while dodging the divine retribution. This dude doesn't look particularly strong, and so apparently there was no need to be afraid of him. And as soon as people thought about it, the representative of divine retribution raised a staff above his head. Descending from the sky, he stood with his feet on the ground and took a few steps forward. Immediately afterward, he struck the stone ground with his staff loudly. A loud electrical pulse echoed throughout the ruined settlement. The representative of divine retribution used the field of restriction. Until the caster cancels the skill, no one can leave the area. All the characteristics of the players in the restriction field were lowered by 50%. The people trapped in the restricted field began to panic, beating their fists on the force barrier and begging to be let out. About 300 players were caught. It's a shame, but there's no saving them now. And as soon as Rune thought about it, the representative of divine retribution struck the ground with his staff, and thousands of arrows immediately materialized around him. Realizing it had started again, the dark-haired boy turned away so as not to see the horror that was about to happen. Thousands of arrows, a second created by the sacred creature, immediately started flying in different directions, killing the players one by one. The people inside the barrier started trying to run away in terror, not realizing how they could dodge attacks that couldn't even be seen. Restriction field. If caught in such a trap, it is almost impossible to dodge the light arrows. But if you put your mind to it a bit, who could find a way to dodge could well be found. However, Rune doesn't have time for that right now. He needs to hurry while the enemy is distracted. As expected, the representative of divine retribution was so focused on killing people that he completely stopped watching the rear. Rune's plan now is to ambush the enemy when the barrier collapses. Soon, the last person trapped died and the restriction field began to dissipate. Here it is, the perfect chance to finish this creature off. Rune's first concern is that his opponent will accidentally turn around, since he can't hear him. Jumping into the air, the guy approached the representatives of divine retribution at a distance of 5 meters and brought the black scythe behind his back. At the same instant, he cast a death seal effect on his opponent. The boy needs to deal critical damage with his first attack. The very next moment, the Divine Retribution representative turned around and looked at Black Scythe. Though he did manage to spot the guy, it was too late. Ryuman thrust the scythe blade into his opponent's face before pulling it out and recoiling. The boy's plan is really working. He got him right in the eye. And while the enemy, holding his face, screamed in pain, Black Scythe landed on the ground and stepped back to a safe distance. With the death seal, Ryuman can see his opponent's remaining health. This time, the Divine Retribution representative had about 60% remaining. The guy was able to take down about 40% with a single attack. Not bad. Now this sacred being will try to use the restriction field to find the boy. Realizing this, the guy deliberately ran out of the opponent's skill range. The next step for Ryuman would be to attack the representatives of Divine Retribution when he realizes he hasn't caught anyone and cancel the restriction field. The boy was very lucky in that he managed to wound his enemy in the eye, and since he'd already taken away one of his eyes, it would be logical to take the other one. Striking a second blow at the representative of Divine Retribution, Black Scythe completely deprived him of his sight. As the sacred creature screamed in pain, Ryuman landed next to it, still holding his weapon in his hand. In the same instant, the Divine Retribution representative used the restriction field, lowering all the stats of the players inside by 50%. However, it doesn't matter now. Without sight, the enemy is nothing but a bag of bones. Since the sacred being cannot see, he tries to send arrows of light in all directions to try to kill Ryuman. "The Knight of Death," said Black Scythe, standing next to the enemy. The dark matter immediately began to absorb the power of the light arrows. That's right, light is weaker than darkness. And such are the laws of this world. Let's get it over with.
Pet the cat.